Scene 1. Leaving the adoption agency. Mia was both proud of herself for fulfilling a promise she made long ago to adopt a child so they could have a better chance at life like was done for her many years ago, and a little worried that she made the right choice. Kennedy Towns had been moved from foster home to foster home, causing enough trouble that it was being highly considered sending him off to juvenile hall. When she first saw him she thought he was much younger considering his height and looks, but when she was told his short stature of 5 foot even was from a series of neglect he had gone through when he was first put into the system, heart leaped for him. He had strawberry blonde hair much like her own, though with how messy and greasy it was she was sure he didn't have the best of grooming habits much like most teenage boys. When she was left in the system with her little sister Rosemary she had almost been charged with arson. She had only been playing with the lighter, out of childlike curiosity and maybe a tiny streak of rebellion when things accidentally caught fire. She was lucky to not only move past that event in her life, but to also be adopted and given a proper education, but mostly lucky to have that unconditional love she didn't think she deserved. Her little sister Rosemary wasn't as lucky. She had stayed in the system till she was 17 and she supposed that was one reason she lived the type of life she did. Mia never did find out why or how she got out before she was 17 without being adopted. Her mind moved away from her sister and back to Kennedy. He deserved a home where he could feel loved. The only catch was that because of his situation she had to foster him first before she could officially adopt the boy. Kennedy stepped back from the front door to the house that was supposed to be his new home as he inspected the place some more. He had been dropped off out front and was told someone will follow up once someone was assigned to his case. Kennedy wasn't sure what happened to his last caseworker, or the one before that. He just figured it was a shitty job so everyone quit. That or they just dropped him because he wasn't worth it. Kennedy sighed, taking in the new place he would be staying. It came across as a miniature version of a mansion to him. Heck, the front yard had green grass and a white picket fence, like the place came into being when someone imagined a perfect house. He had met his new foster parent a week ago. She was much taller than himself at 5'7" compared to his 5 foot. Kennedy hated his height. He didn't know how tall his father was, but remembered him being a giant of a man. A drunk driver had taken both his parents from him years before he was even 10, and then the first couple the system sent him to stole his height. Well, they didn't steal it, he corrected himself. Still he seethed with anger that they had kept it from him by hardly feeding him. Malnutrition is what the doctors said when the state finally sent someone to check on him. Him and 4 other kids were being used by the couple to get money from the state and then they mostly ignored them. Since then he had bounced from place to place. He couldn't really trust anyone to not do something like that again. His time was almost up though. He had just turned 17 the week before and that meant 51 more weeks till he had his freedom and access to the insurance money left for him when his parents passed. This new house, this new lady, Miss Mia Adams seemed loaded and nice enough. So maybe he could cool his feet here for a year. It didn't look like she was going to need the money the state gave her. That and it sure helped that he thought she was hot with her overly large breasts, aqua blue-green eyes and strawberry blonde hair. Who knows, maybe when he was 18 she could make a man out of him. He had thought about that last thought more than once before this moment. Kennedy told himself he had no illusions about that coming true, yet it was a thought his male teenage brain would try to cling on to like it was hope itself. Mia opened her front door, smiling in a way that showed her top teeth. When she saw the child she was to foster, she looked him over again much as she did when she decided he needed a good home. The first thing anyone would notice was how short he was, not standing an inch over 5 feet. He was shorter than her oldest daughter of 13 by a good 5 inches. Sure, McKenzie was a little tall, but he was around the same height as her 8, almost 9-year-old Abigail. He even had the same strawberry blonde hair as her. She knew he had longer hair, but she couldn't tell exactly how long with how messy and unkempt it was, much different than how shiny her much prettier daughter kept her own. She thought the similar hair color to one of her daughters would help him fit in more and another sign she should take him in. Stepping forward she wrapped him up in a tight hug, holding him close. "Welcome to your new home, Kennedy." Girls, what do you say? Kennedy's eyes practically rolled back in his head in bliss as she held his head to her bosom, long enough that he thought he could fall asleep standing right there. It was a long hug, but gone far too soon for him. Mia left him so her girls could be introduced. Welcome to your new home, Kennedy. We hope you learn to love it here like we all will learn to love each other. The girls said in almost unison, while they held up a piece of pink poster board that had the name Kennedy done in different colors of glitter with hearts all around it. The two girls, whom Kennedy figured he would end up spending more time with than their mother sadly, looked enough alike that it would be easy to say they were sisters, but the way they dressed told him they had different interests. The younger girl had a few freckles on her face, strawberry blonde hair coming down in wavy curls. She wore a dress that was pink and black that went down just to the skirt where the black broke apart into butterflies across the pink skirt and a pair of flat T-strap shoes. She looked ready to go out somewhere fancy, while her older sister wore a pair of white jeans, a black t-shirt that said the word pink on it, the word being the only thing that was pink, and a pair of white flip-flops, while her shoulder-length copper-red hair came down in a twisted braid. The older girl had the same blue-green eyes as their mother, while the younger one had green eyes. They were cute girls. He just hoped they weren't brats like most kids were. Come in, come in. I know this can be a little overwhelming for you, Kennedy, so why don't the girls show you up to your new room while I get everyone some snacks? Kennedy gave a little shrug, then adjusted his backpack that had all the possessions in the world he owned. 3 extra pairs of socks, 2 pairs of jeans, 1 blue, 1 black and 2 more t-shirts and a single pair of white underwear briefs were all his clothes. He also owned a portable CD player with 3 CDs inherited from a previous foster home when the old owner wasn't watching. Slayer, AC/DC and Judas Priest kept him company much of the time. He loved listening to music and rocking out. They were one of the reasons he grew out his hair. He didn't know how to play a lick of music, but he could imagine using the money coming to him to buy a guitar, getting a few lessons and starting a band. What could be a better story than his own? He was a nobody, surviving a system where no one really mattered and would rise up to leave his mark on the world. Kennedy, follow us. The younger of the girls yelled as she ran up the dark wood-stained stairs with black iron balusters. You can call me Ken, he said, following them up, but at a slower pace. When he got to the top of the stairs, he saw her peeking out from one of 3 doorways to the left of the staircase. Looking to the right, he saw 3 more. Hurry, 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 Kennedy, you got to see it. The blonde girl called with enthusiasm. It's Ken, he said in a normal tone of voice that he knew she couldn't hear from where he was. The girl was already aggravating him. He didn't have much expectation for where he would be sleeping, but he really wasn't prepared for what he found. The walls were a glossy eggshell white, with a top trim about 4 inches wide of pink. The floors were a dark hardwood with a large center rug that took up much of the floor. The cream-colored rug was shaggy, but had a few spots in it like someone tried coloring on it directly. In the center of the room was a white metal frame bed with what he would learn later were white satin sheets and half a dozen pillows in various sizes. At the foot of the bed was a solid wood chest that seemed as if it could have been used like a movie prop to hide buried treasure in. To either side of the bed were white nightstands, one bare, the other with a small lamp and alarm clock sitting on it. On the far wall was a 2-section bookshelf and a white desk. Together they occupied the entire wall, though the desk was sitting in front of a window. The room looked like it belonged to a girl and he hated it. The older of the girls was standing on the bed pinning the pink poster board over his head. Kennedy now realized he hadn't gotten their names yet. Well, he was told before he came here, but he wasn't paying much attention. Hey, what's your name? You can take that down, I won't be needing it. Appreciate the thought, he said, laying on the sarcasm. He was normally the type to just keep quiet and his head down till he felt like doing something, but if there was a chance he was going to stick around, he needed the kids to know he was in charge. Doing a small jump, McKenzie fell down to her but on the mattress, bouncing just once before standing up. I'm McKenzie and that is Abigail, she said, pointing off to her little sister now sitting on the far side of the bed kicking her feet in the air. I'm Abby. McKenzie nodded to her little sis. Sorry, she is Abby. McKenzie corrected her statement as she took in how this older boy was skinnier than her and much shorter. Great, now we all know each other. I'm Ken, he said, pointing his thumb to himself. You're Abby and you're McKenzie. Sometimes I call her Kenzie, she has a pretty name and Ken isn't a good name. Kennedy is much prettier, the youngest of the three said, pointing up the poster board on the wall. Plus, like, it's also the name of a president. Great, but still, call me Ken. He looked back to the girly room, noticing there was no dresser. Before he could ask about that, the younger girl jumped off the bed and came running right at him. His body tensed, his hands moved into fists by the sudden movement in his direction. He had been beaten up by other kids in the system more times than could be counted, things taken directly from his hands as he tried to cling to something, so much so that when he wasn't in a foster home he was kept with younger kids, people more his size, so it'd happen less. There was no attack though. She just came right up to him and then bounced up to the balls of her feet. You're really short, she said, still bouncing up a little to his height. Look who's talking, Pipsqueak, you're shorter than me. Abigail stuck her tongue out at him. Yeah, but I'm only 8. It was an antagonizing tone of voice that changed quickly after she mentioned her age, adding the qualifier happily. But I'm almost 9. Kenny took a deep breath and then shoved the younger girl down back onto his new mattress. Hey! Abigail complained while her sister bit her bottom lip, shaking her head twice before reaching forward to grab the older boy's earlobe, much like her mother did to her when she was in trouble. Ow, 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 let go! He had head tilted off to the side to try and mitigate some of the sudden pain. I will as soon as you, Kennedy, apologized to Abby. McKenzie took the time to draw out his full name. You may be older than me, but I'm bigger than you and I will not be letting anyone bully my little sister, she said in a stern tone. Yeah, no one gets to bully me but her, she shouldn't do it cause like it is mean, but only she can do it. Still holding on to Kennedy's ear, she looked to her little sis. You aren't helping as much as you think, Abby. Now say you're sorry. Geez, okay, okay. I'm sorry, Abby. Pinching a little harder, McKenzie gave the lobe a slight twist. She thinks Kennedy is prettier, so is it okay for her to call you that? Yes, 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 God. Just let go. Tell her it is okay, and why. The pain was intense. It wasn't the first time he had someone do this to his ear, but usually it was because they were pulling him along to a bathroom to use his teeth like a washboard for a bar of soap after he said something or things he shouldn't. Abby, you can call me Kennedy because it is prettier. There, happy? He immediately started to rub his ear when she let go, deciding they were both definitely brats and that he was going to have to be more careful around the older one from now on. Mommy said you were older than us, but you're really short, so like, how old are you? Abby asked, still on the bed where he pushed her. Rude to phrase things like that, but I just turned 17 last week. That doesn't sound right. Older means taller and you're smaller than Kenzie, and like boys are supposed to be taller than girls, so you can't even be 13 like her. McKenzie started to laugh. At first she tried covering her mouth, but it just kept coming. By that logic he would have to be 9 because he is just taller than you. Nuh-uh, he is like only an inch taller, so he has to be 10 because I'm going to be 9 soon. That is not how any of this works. Stop being brats. I'm sorry, what is going on here? Mia said, now standing in the doorway with her hands on her hips. She had overheard them making fun of the boy's height, and him insulting them in return, but she always found it best to let them tell her their truth. Kennedy is lying about his age and he called us brats and pushed me down. McKenzie looked to her sister, wishing she wasn't always such a tattletale. Is that what happened? Mia looked at Kennedy and McKenzie. Kennedy let out a heavy sigh, shrugging his shoulders. It doesn't matter anyways, sure, why not, I did all of that. Are you going to punish me or send me away? His admission surprised both the girls, used to the other denying all charges when they went to their mother. Kennedy, I do believe in discipline, but I also believe in honesty. She then turned to look at both her girls. Abigail Jessica Adams, McKenzie Sarah Adams, I told you to make Kennedy feel welcome here, not to tease him. Now I want you to tell him you are sorry and to give him a big hug so he knows you mean it. She then turned back to the teenage boy. Now in this household we use our words, not our hands when we have a disagreement, and we do not insult each other. Is that understood? He had been in this house for around 15 minutes and it already felt like too big of a bother, let alone trying to wait it out a year. Though he did really enjoy Mia's hug when he arrived. Yeah, I got it. Could I, get another hug from you too? Mia smiled, giving the boy another generous hug. He wasn't taken in blindly, she knew how much trouble he had caused every other place he had been, to the point they were ready to put him in juvenile hall rather than deal with him anymore. Mia herself had been adopted many years ago and understood how lonely everyone was and how angry they could get. She had been shown love and made something of herself with hard work. She was sure that was what the boy needed too. Of course, you can have as many hugs and as often as you like, Kennedy. When she let go, each of her girls apologized and hugged him in turn. Abigail even kissed him on the cheek. She wished she had a camera for that moment. She wanted to film all of his arrival, but thought that might scare the boy more than he obviously was. Now I know this room doesn't look like much, it used to be the girls' playroom. McKenzie has grown out of that, but Abigail was more than happy to give up her playroom to have you here. That is also why it is more. She looked up at the pink border going around the room. Feminine, but I figured there was no point in painting things or getting you new furniture till I knew what you liked. Wait. Kennedy said, looking at the woman stunned, positive he didn't hear or understand her correctly. Are you saying you are going to let me pick out things for the room? She gave him a bright smile as she nodded. You can also pick out the colors for your room, but within reason. We can do all of that together, and I thought it could be a fun activity for all of us to paint the room as a family. As a family? This isn't a Kennedy room yet, but I'm betting we can make it feel more like you in time. She pointed to the poster board the girls had pinned to his wall. They knew it was for a boy, but she never could control them completely. This is your room, and while I'm your foster mother, I'm hoping that maybe one day I could adopt you and just be your mother. Would you like that? Would you like to be part of our family? Tears welled up in his eyes. He had just pushed her daughter, she deserved it, but it was her flesh and blood, and she turned around and just asked him if he wanted to join them. It was sappy, and a stupid thing to say, she didn't know him or what he had done. Still though, the words were something he hadn't even considered, so tears flowed as he nodded. He would like that, but she would change her mind. Everyone did about having him around, but right now that hope, that lie, was the best feeling in the world. Scene 2. The first week was a major adjustment for everyone in the house. Kennedy wasn't used to being treated the way he was here. Miss Mia always seemed ready to give him or her girls a loving hug, and he very much appreciated being able to bury his face into her chest. He learned a great deal about her. She was only 31, going on 32, and that meant she had her oldest when she was only 18. Her husband passed away 5 years ago, leaving her with enough money to start her own business. One of the biggest things he learned was when he asked her why she would consider adopting when she already had kids. When I was younger, both myself and my little sister were in the foster system. I was lucky, someone adopted me, welcomed me into their family and gave me the tools I needed to be who I am today. Her reasoning made sense to Kennedy, but by the way she told her story it seemed like her younger sister didn't get the same opportunity. Sensing a sensitive subject, he didn't inquire about her sibling, but she didn't matter to him anyways, it wasn't like she was here. That week he learned a few more things, like how Miss Mia was incredibly busy with her job. Something he could understand, considering she owned her own business, but she often worked from home to be with her kids or took them to the office where she had set up a daycare for her workers, along with a gym. The girls were a major adjustment. He thought it was going to be a nice change of pace to have his own personal space, his very own room. One of the first things he had to do was take better care of himself, Miss Mia making him scrub his body and wash his hair, making it come down to almost his shoulders now that it was cleaned and brushed. Over the first week he didn't much feel like the room was his, with how often Abby just walked in. Sometimes she wanted him to play with her, other times she just wanted to play in the room like she used to. Whenever he would turn her away, she would complain to her older sister, who was across the hallway from him. McKenzie was across the hall, they had a bathroom between them and then on the other side of the stairs was the master bedroom, a linen closet and Abby's room. McKenzie was another problem, she wasn't always trying to follow him around like Abby, but she kept trying to act like she was in charge when her mother wasn't around. He was sure the girl was just used to it, being 5 years older than her sister, she just didn't seem to care he was 4 years older than her. When he would point it out, she wasn't receptive and was always telling him to just play with Abby when she came around. "I don't want to play with dolls, I don't want to color." He would tell her, but she didn't listen. He was sure it didn't help that he would sit and color with either of them at night while they watched TV together, but he only did that because Miss Mia often joined as a family activity. The more he was around the woman, the more captivated he was with her. He had never been around an adult who took the time to spend so much time with kids, let alone asked what they wanted to do for fun. She seemed big on family time, saying how many families will just sit and watch TV, and while that was acceptable, they should also be doing something. That something was coloring with crayons one night, with colored pencils another night, a board game and even a puzzle. Gatherings like this were an adjustment, one he was happy to adjust to. The first weekend he was promised they would go over new decor for the bedroom, then go shopping, so he had more than just a few articles of clothing. Though that plan changed upon an emergency at the office. "I apologize, Ken, something came up at work, I'll have to give you a rain check." He gave her a shrug, it wasn't close to the first time an adult didn't fulfill their promise to him. I dunno, it's okay. Not like I really need more clothes and the bedroom is growing on me." He lied about the bedroom growing on him, but it felt like she actually meant the apology, unlike most adults he had been around. "You absolutely do need more, and need to throw out much of what you have. That shirt is threadbare." Mia gave the young man a weak smile, wishing she didn't have to cancel on him, but one of her consultants dropped the ball on a report that was due that Monday to the EPA. The U.S. government was her biggest client, a contract she snagged thanks to being a woman-owned business, but not coming through on deadlines would be a quick road to losing it. "Are you really liking your room? Having a room?" "Oh yeah, when I can keep Abby out, but everything else about it. Yeah, it is good." He was going to tell her how he hated the girly pink line of paint in the room along with the rest of the girly stuff, but he didn't want to seem ungrateful. Though the biggest problem was the girls, that poster board they made for him just kept ending back up on his wall, no matter how many times he took it down. He had even put it in the trash can outside, and yet it ended back up. "I am really glad to hear that, Ken, still I would like to help make that your own space, so we can look at something soon. Far as Abby goes, I know it is an adjustment. I am not blind or deaf to the arguments in the household, but I'm sure it will become easier with time. Both of the girls say how happy they are to have you around, maybe you can throw them a bone or two?" He let out a sigh. He didn't want to play with either of them, but it was hard for Kennedy to say no when Miss Mia was asking for so little of him. The last foster home treated him like he was their gardener. I will try harder. Good, maybe tonight we could talk about grooming too. That caught Kennedy off guard. What do you mean? I know it can be a problem with teenage boys, but... Mia held the word for a second, trying to think if there was a more delicate way to put it. Well, you smell like a teenage boy. Body odor, unwashed hair. You can do better than that, because I know you are better than that. I can see that you are trying, but you do need to bathe at least once a day and brushing your hair just as often. Kenny touched the edges of his long hair, running his hand along its length before twisting one finger in it. He hadn't thought about it, but he spent as little time as he could in the bathroom. Kennedy had learned long ago long showers used up hot water, and if a foster family didn't have the hot water they expected, someone, him, would be paying a price. Easy enough, he said with a shrug. Great, now the bad news. You and the girls have to come along with me to the office. My normal daycare attendant won't be in today, but I got someone else to cover. Wait. I don't need to go into daycare. I'm 17. He felt her put her hand on his shoulder. Not for you, Ken, for the girls. You can spend time in the gym across the hall or in there with them if you want company. You are almost an adult. In fact, I was wondering if you would be okay helping out this week with the girls? He figured she wanted him to watch them when she was away, and he'd be happy for Miss Mia to declare he was in charge. That would let some air out of McKenzie's sails. Kennedy also knew Miss Mia didn't really know everything that went on in the house, otherwise he'd have been punished when he put a chair under the door handle to the basement, locking McKenzie down there for an hour. I'm glad to hear it. Just write my last name with yours when you sign up so everyone knows you are with me. The weekend at the office wasn't exciting in any way for Kennedy. The gym wasn't much to look at. The far wall was a big mirror, the floors were covered in a hardish foam, and there were only 4 pieces of workout machines there. A treadmill, 2 electronic bikes, and a rowing machine. Luckily, it had a flat-screen TV he could use to pass the time, along with his music. The only time he went over to the daycare was to sign up to volunteer for a field day at the park for the girls' school. It was a yellow piece of paper with black writing. One column said kids, the other adults, so he printed his first name Kennedy under kids, adding Mia's last name Adams. He disliked being thought of as a kid, but he wasn't an adult yet. Scene 3. Miss Mia, I'm missing some of my clothes. I don't have any socks or a shirt to wear. Kennedy said, coming into the master bedroom wearing only a pair of jeans. Turning around to face her door, she gave the boy a sad face. I'm sorry, Ken, but I threw out some of your clothes this morning. They had holes in them after going through the wash. We should have handled this earlier in the week, but tonight we will pick up a few things to tide you over. And what did I tell you about calling me Miss Mia? That I should just call you Mia. He wasn't really looking forward to the day at the park anyhow, and this was a good excuse to have some alone time. A day without some clothing would be fine. I understand, too bad I was looking forward to the recreation day or whatever it was called. He ran his hand through the ends of his strawberry blonde hair, twisting his finger through it. The hair felt so different after being washed and conditioned. He didn't mind the beautiful woman running the thick brush through it after. The brushing felt wonderful, and he was trying to make it a habit to get her to do it. It was a few minutes he got just with her, and after he would lean back, putting his head on her chest, content with the world. The downsize, something he hated, was the flowery smell from using the girl's shampoo. It will be a fun day, and I will not have you missing it. She turned back to what she was doing briefly, packing the bag she was bringing with extra clothes for the girls in case they got too dirty. I bet Abigail has a shirt and some socks you can borrow. Those are girls' clothes, and she's like 8. She is about the same size as you. Anything of mine or Mackenzie's will not fit your frame, and clothes are just clothes. Now run along and ask your sister for a shirt and socks." The macho attitude of girls' things have cooties really didn't bother her. She should have picked up something for him by now. It would have been easy to take him out to a box store to get clothes instead of playing the board game the other night, but she was just so wrapped up in trying to make him feel like part of the family. Kennedy crossed his arms over his chest. He liked Miss Mia, but he was not some sissy that would be okay with wearing girls' things. "No, I'm not wearing girls' clothes, and she is not my sister. She is a brat." Mia turned on him, looking at him fiercely. She had just been thinking about him being part of the family when he threw it back her face, while insulting her little girl. "Kennedy, you were warned about insulting people. So long as you live under this roof, you will show respect to others, and that includes doing what I say." He didn't just see her move closer to him as she talked, but he could feel it and the commanding tone to her voice that hinted at something worse if he pressed on. "Okay, okay," he said, taking 2 steps back. "I will go get Abby." "See that you do." Mia narrowed her eyes, noticing for the first time she didn't see the tops of his underwear. "Are you wearing underwear, Kennedy?" He put his thumbs through the belt loops of his pants, pulling them up a little. "No, all of mine are dirty. I will be fine till later." "That is unsanitary." She let out a sigh. She had just done laundry, and if his were dirty, that meant he didn't put them in the hamper. "Go ask your sister for some underwear too." "What?" "I'm not wearing panties." "Don't be difficult, Kennedy. Just do what you are told." With that he slinked away, noticing she went to using his full name instead of just calling him Ken when she was upset. He didn't want to do what she said, but he didn't feel like he had much of a choice. For now at least, it wasn't like he could go back into the system. He had already been told this was his last chance, otherwise he would be spending time in jail, and considering how much he got picked on as it was, he didn't want to put himself at the mercy of anyone in juvie. He went across the hall, Abby's room being near the master bedroom. "Your mom." He took a deep breath to try and quell the torrent of anger inside his belly. "She said I needed to borrow some clothes." Abby had been sitting by her window reading The Secret Life of Teddy Bears for the 12th time. "You want to borrow my clothes?" "No, I do not want to wear anything of yours." He didn't want anyone thinking he wanted that sort of thing, and really didn't like the excitement that instantly came to her face. She scrunched up her nose, closing her book. "You want to borrow my clothes, but you don't want to wear them? What do you want them for?" "No, Abby." Kennedy put his hand to his bare chest. "I don't want to wear your things, but I need to. I don't have any shirts, socks, or underwear right now. Can you not make a big deal of this, please?" The young girl looked him up and down, letting out a giggle at the idea of him wearing something of hers. "Well, if you don't want to wear my clothes, then you can't have them." "What?" "No, just give me a plain t-shirt." "That is no way to ask to play dress up." She smiled at him, picking up one of her dolls from the floor. "We are not playing dress up. I told you I only need a shirt, and just for today." He hated this. He hated that she was only an inch shorter than him. He hated having to wear her clothes. He hated having to ask to wear them. "I'm only doing this because your mom said I have to. I don't have a lot of shirts, but if you ask real nicely I will give you one and some panties and some cute socks. But if you don't, then you can have a dress or nothing." Looking behind himself he could see the master bedroom, but not Miss Mia. He really didn't want her getting involved, and if he forced anything with Abigail, his short time here had taught him she would go right to her. "Can I please borrow some clothes?" "You want to borrow some of her, what?" He had just slipped out the doorway and no one was there, but of course the second he said something so embarrassing the other girl had to show up to hear it. Kennedy wants to borrow some of my clothes for today so he can be pretty. Hanging his head, Kennedy didn't even bother to turn around to look at McKenzie. I didn't say that. But you did say you want to wear her clothes? Does Mom know? Abby smiled brightly at her older sister. Yep. She told him to come play dress up with me. She did not. Kennedy said with a growl in his voice. Hey, don't you get snippy with me, mister. McKenzie said as she stalked around him till she was looking down into his eyes. Mom didn't send you, but you want to wear her clothes. What do you want to wear? He wants to wear one of my dresses. McKenzie glanced over at her little sister, shaking her head. I doubt that, but I bet he would look good in one. Actually, I bet the two of you would almost look like twins with you both having similar hair and heights. McKenzie. Kennedy said her name like a plea. Relax, I'm not going to put you in one of her dresses, but it would be fun to have another little sister. He did not like how the 13-year-old was looking at him. I will make you a deal. If you call me Big Sis today, then I won't tell Mom about you locking me in the basement. Blackmail? Seriously? He knew he'd regret making the deal, and by the time he was given clothes it came true. McKenzie didn't let Abby pick out the clothes, for that he was thankful for, but what she gave him made his stomach sink. He was given thin white socks that had lace at the top, the panties were pink and satin, and the t-shirt was white with a pink elastic band where a normal boy's shirt would just be solid white. Sorry, little sis, but Abby is pretty much a girly girl. If you were bigger, I'd have something you'd like better. He looked aghast at the articles of clothing in his hands, what McKenzie said coming to him slowly. Wait, little sis? McKenzie giggled, causing Abigail to do the same. Of course, if I'm the big sister that makes you. She twirled one finger in a circle in the air before pointing it at him. The little sibling and you are going to be wearing panties. No boy would do that, so you have to be my little sister today. Groaning, he went to his bathroom to change. It took him long enough that McKenzie knocked on the door to ask if he needed help. He had just been standing there holding the panties in his trembling hand. The girls knew little about personal space, so he hurried his task along so that they didn't come to help. The pink panties felt cool and soft to the touch. He was surprised how comfortable they felt compared to his normal underwear. Why are girls' underwear so soft compared to boys'? It made no sense, but he never was the one buying underwear, so perhaps this was just the type of feeling when people could spend real money on clothes. The underwear and socks would be covered by his pants. The only real problem he had was the pink around the collar of his shirt. There was not much he could do about it except frown and complain, things he planned to do plenty of. Seeing himself in the mirror with it made him so embarrassed. An 8-year-old girl's clothes fit him and he was about to go out into public wearing them. He put his hair into his normal low ponytail before exiting the bathroom. He expected to see McKenzie and Abigail there to laugh and make fun of him, but he only found McKenzie there leaning against a wall smiling at him. Not so bad, right? If I told you it wasn't so bad, would you leave me alone? Today we are going to have fun at the park all together, so I don't think I can. But if you gave me a hug and thanked me for the help, downstairs, where Mom can see, I would. McKenzie, is it always going to be like this between us? Do you really hate me that much? Slow down there, we welcomed you here. I was super happy to have someone older to talk to, but you spoiled all of that. Besides, I don't hate you, I actually like you and think you are cute. He almost rolled his eyes at the idea that a 13-year-old thought he was cute, but it didn't track for her to do this to him and say she liked him. You like me, but want to torture me? He asked while raising an eyebrow. Something like that. Now let's get downstairs, little sis, so you can show Mom how much you appreciate me. With a sigh he followed the taller red-headed girl down the stairs. He stopped moving as he came into sight of the living room when Abby looked away from one of her childish shows to smile at him. He rolled his eyes and picked up the pace to follow McKenzie into the kitchen where Miss Mia was just pouring herself some coffee into a mug. "Hey Mom, we are all ready to go now." Turning around, Mia smiled at her eldest daughter, surprised to see Kennedy walking into the kitchen wearing a white and pink shirt. "Thank you for the help getting ready," Kennedy said, wrapping his arms around the girl. "McKenzie, did you pick out that white and pink shirt for Kennedy to wear?" "Yep. Abby was trying to make him wear one of her dresses, so I came to help." Kennedy stayed quiet, feeling uneasy under the older woman's appraising eyes. The shirt was the same as any shirt he could have worn, except it had pink on it, but he also knew she was aware he was wearing panties. Laughing, Mia smiled at the idea of her little one trying to get the older boy to play dress-up with her. "Well, I do suppose that is better, but don't you think you could have chose something with less pink on it?" "Mom, he likes what I picked out, and it isn't like Abby has a lot of options." "You like it, don't you, Kennedy?" McKenzie turned her back to face the smaller boy, giving him a hard look in the eye. "You, said it was just clothes, so it doesn't matter." Feeling the pair of yes, not just seeing the intense glare from McKenzie, he continued. "So yeah, I guess I like it, that is why I thanked her." Blinking a few times, Mia nodded her head, glad Kennedy was being such a good sport about this. She had considered letting him stay home after all. A teen boy would never want to go out wearing girls' clothes no matter if people could tell or not, but here he was in a good mood thanking her daughter for picking out the clothes. If he wasn't going to raise a fuss again, then she wasn't going to bring it up either. She really did want a family day, and this school event was it. Scene 4. Arriving at the park, Mia handed a large bag to her oldest that was full of things they would need for the park, like sunscreen, a first aid kit, and a change of clothes for the girls if they got too dirty playing that day. Opening the back of her large SUV, she took out the cooler full of chicken strips she got from a popular chicken fast food joint on the way to the park, positive the children would love to have an option for something to eat later. "Ken, Abby, would you carry this for me please?" The cooler was just your normal everyday cooler, and Kendi scoffed at needing help, especially from a little twerp. "I don't need help, I can get it myself." He grabbed both handles and picked up the blue and white cooler, but Mia could see his arms shaking from the effort of holding it up. She knew it was some male pride, but she needed him to know it wasn't okay to push himself when it came to things like this, or he could end up hurting himself. "Ken, let your sister help." "I said I got it." Kennedy snapped back, wishing she would close the rear door so they could head over to the tables so he could put it down. "Kennedy, I will not have you talking back like that. Now put it down and let your sister help." He almost dropped it hearing the "you are in trouble mom" voice. "Oof, you could call me Ken, you know." He let out the sound, running his hand through his hair to pull it back and get it out of his face as he stood back up. His hair fell right back down and flew in the light breeze, making him realize it wasn't just a few strands that had gotten loose from the rubber band, but the band itself was gone. With annoyance, he rolled his eyes. "I call you Ken to respect your wishes. When you are being disrespectful, you get that in return. Besides, you should be proud of your name. Someone who loved you gave it to you." Kennedy rolled his eyes and then did it for the third time in less than a minute when Abby spoke up. "You can call me Abigail if you want, Mommy. You gave me the bestest, prettiest name." She then gave the stink eye to the boy. "I would love to help you bring this to one of the tables, Kennedy." "I don't need your help, squirt." Mia took a deep breath. She knew having another teenager around would be a challenge. She just didn't think she would be facing the same one over and over again. "That is not appreciated, mister. Tell your sister you are sorry and thank her for helping you." Looking at Mia, Kennedy scoffed, but quickly capitulated under the stern gaze. Looks like that told him she was mad, and no matter how nice she seemed, he had learned what happened when those bigger than him got mad. "Fine, I'm sorry I said that, and thank you for helping me." He really didn't like it when the beautiful woman was mad at him. Kennedy had tried to hone his skills to avoid confrontations like this, but he just couldn't help feeling so annoyed by her daughters. Seeing the small teen avert his eyes, his uncared-for hair blowing in his face, gave Mia a pang of guilt. She needed to be strong so that he had structure and peace in her house, but she could have already taken him for a haircut, something that was on the agenda for the weekend, for now though she could solve part of the problem. "What happened to your hairband?" Kennedy touched his hair, knowing it was already gone as the slight breeze kept blowing his hair back into his face. Still his only reply was a shrug. Speak when spoken to was a lesson he had learned, but so is keep your mouth shut when you lose something even if it isn't your fault. Mia shook her head, pulling the black scrunchie from her own hair. She could brush it back out quickly enough, but it looked like Kennedy was having some trouble managing his own today. "Here, let me help," she said, moving over to bunch up his hair into a ponytail, moving mostly on reflex from doing this with her girls hundreds of times and not thinking about how boys wore theirs, as she put it up into a high ponytail. "That should keep your hair out of your face. Now let's get a move on Adam's family." "Done, done, done." McKenzie made the noises before she snapped her fingers twice and let out a small squeal of laughter. While Kennedy grabbed one side of the cooler, wishing he was stronger, taller and just more, so he wouldn't have to have help. He was a boy and shouldn't be needing help like this, it just made him feel small along with being small. Getting to the picnic area where everyone was set up, the group put down their things. Mia pulled a brush from her purse to fix her hair that she thought she was going to be keeping up today. "Girls, go check in with Mrs. Jolene, it looks like she is checking everyone in over there." She motioned with her chin before looking at Kennedy. "Sorry, I'm still getting used to having a boy around. Please go check in too, and no attitude to any of the adults here today please. If I don't get any complaints about any of you today we will get some ice cream when we leave," she said, hoping it would be a good enough incentive for Kennedy to not give this attitude of his to others, McKenzie to not try and boss the other kids around or Abigail to not be so sensitive. "Good morning McKenzie, Abby, I hope you are ready to have some fun today." Jolene put a check mark next to each of the Adams girls' names. She normally was in charge of the daycare facilities that Mia had at her office, but was lending a hand to her husband who was the vice principal of their school. "And who do we have here?" she asked, seeing another girl who had also come from her boss and stood behind the girls. Looking at the new girl whose eyes were looking around the park and at the other students was wearing a white and pink shirt, ratty beat-up sneakers and ripped jeans that looked like they were worn to the park because Mia didn't care if they got ruined. Her hair was up in a ponytail with a black scrunchie and looked like she was in a sour mood. "This is Kennedy," McKenzie said with a half wave of her hand. Rushing up to give the 52-year-old tall woman a hug, Abigail was bouncing with excitement for the day. "Mom said she is going to adopt Kendi and we are all going to be a big family." Jolene scanned the sign-up sheet, seeing Kennedy Adams on the list. She smiled, seeing the girl was already writing her name as if she was part of their family already. "Oh, that sounds exciting. I bet you are excited to have a middle sister." Abby scrunched up her face, while Mackenzie's smile grew several-fold. "Middle?" the younger girl said in confusion. "Yes, you are the little sister and Mackenzie is the big sister." Jolene turned her attention to the third girl. "I bet you are excited to join their family, dearie. How old are you?" Kennedy hadn't been fully paying attention to what the woman with graying brown hair had been saying, but being accused of being a little girl had pulled all his focus to her. "I'm not a girl and I'm 17. Kennedy said, puffing up his chest, annoyed that the old bat even with glasses was so blind she thought he was just another kid and a girl at that. "Nah. Kennedy is 10. He lied about his age before too," Abigail said, shaking her head and balling her hands into fists. hearing only part of what the younger girl said as another child yelled for their father that was only dropping them off for the day. Jolene gave a practiced motherly smile. While it is never a good idea to fib, you all will be grown-ups before you know it. Now why don't you run along and play before we call everyone for some games? Play? I'm supposed to help. Kennedy snapped, wincing soon as he did when he felt the pain to his foot. He started to chide himself for talking that way before he realized it was the redhead's doing. McKenzie stepped hard on Kennedy's foot, giving him a glare right into his eye. My new little sis is always trying to be helpful, but the adults don't need our help now. Let's leave them to it. I do appreciate the offer, Kennedy, but McKenzie is right. Go with her, she will not steer you wrong. Kennedy found himself being pulled off by his wrist by McKenzie as Abby ran past them and over to another girl around her own age, he guessed. What are you doing? Let me go, he said, trying to tug his arm free from her grip, that he thought it was much stronger than it had any right to be. I said let go of me, you gorilla. Don't say that. McKenzie said, feeling hurt. She sometimes felt a little insecure about being taller than her classmates and almost being as tall as her mom. When she stopped moving and started to whine, Kennedy was able to pull his wrist free from her grip. Looking back to the lady with the clipboard, he made a sour face. I get why you went along with what she said, the two of you are brats, but why did she think I was a girl? No, I went along with it because you were getting mad and were to be mean to Mrs. Jolene, and then we wouldn't get ice cream when we go home. McKenzie looked at the boy over again, wearing her little sister's clothes and having his hair up in a ponytail held by a scrunchie. It was easy for her to see what the older woman did. Don't worry about it, Mom will straighten her out, and that way no one gets in trouble. Now let's go to the swing set before someone else takes them. I'm supposed to be watching the kids, not be one of them, McKenzie. He didn't know the last time he used a swing set, but going off to play with a 13-year-old wasn't his idea of a fun time. Too bad, Kennedy, till Mom corrects things you are my sweet 10-year-old little sister. So you better start calling me Big Sis or I will drop you off with Abby and tell her you want to play dolls. You know what will happen when you refuse to play. With a grumble, Kennedy acknowledged what would happen if she did as she threatened. She will just go and tell your mom. That would only get me in trouble and we wouldn't get ice cream still. Yeah, but it will just be extra embarrassing for you. So what will it be, little sis? The swings. Kennedy said in a defeated voice, telling himself that it wasn't a real loss, it was just a swing set. McKenzie bounced up and down a few times, her smile growing with each hop. Yay! I just knew today was going to be fun. Scene 5. Jumping off the swing when it was almost at its peak, Kennedy landed in the sand a good 2 feet farther from the swing than McKenzie. See, I told you I could get further than you. He grinned at the red-headed girl. Despite his objections, being on the swing was fun. The feeling of the air whipping past him as he swung higher and higher, it felt freeing. It made him wonder why he had thought of it as a child's activity. McKenzie disliked it when he acted smug. He had said how boys were just better at physical things, and she just knew that wasn't true. She had sat with her mom to watch some of the Olympics, and she saw other girls do incredible things she could only imagine doing. McKenzie gave a shrug to the boy like it didn't matter that he beat her, even though she was sure he only went farther than her because he was lighter. You don't have to pretend to be mature, you are just a 13-year-old girl. It felt good to win. It wasn't a feeling he got often, but the way the young teen acted, like it was nothing, irked him, like she was trying to deny his moment of victory after she had made such a big deal about this. Taking a deep breath, McKenzie pressed her lips together in a line, feeling offended by what he said. I am mature, everyone says so, who does he think he is? What she did next wasn't mature, it was something Abby and her did to one another often, and it just felt right, so she stuck her tongue out at him. You think you are so much better than me, then let's go play tag with Abby. Then we will see if you are a 17-year-old boy or just a 10-year-old girl. Kennedy looked over to where the excited Adams girl was when he last saw her. She was now running around the open field area of the park trying to make her way to a tree where a few other kids were clinging to it as another kid chased after her. He smirked. Kennedy knew he wasn't strong or tough like some of the other boys he had been around, but he knew he was fast. Sounds fine to me. I will show you how much better I am. Remembering the power she had over the older boy, McKenzie put her hands on her hips and gave him a smile that showed just a hint of teeth. Big sis, or big sister. Huh? He responded, not following the jump in conversation. Asserting the authority she had over her sibling, an authority she was enjoying considering their age gap, Kenzie reminded him of his place, or at least his place for today. You have to call me that today, remember? Fine. I will show you how much slower you are than me, big sis. He said the last part with as much sarcasm as he could manage. Better. She said casually before running past him, slapping him on the back as she went by. Hey! He yelled, chasing after the taller girl. The two quickly got to the group of kids playing tag and joined in on the game. Everyone! McKenzie projected her voice for people in the vicinity, so she would have their attention. Kennedy here says she is faster than everyone, so she gets to be it. Taking in a deep breath and puffing up his chest, Kennedy put his thumb to his torso. I am a he. While he was yelling, McKenzie calmly spoke to the group around them. Yes, we all know you are a she. He practically started to growl at the annoying girl. You know. His words were cut off when McKenzie then yelled to the group. Everyone run, she is it. It felt like his eyes practically popped out of his skull with how hard he was glaring at the redhead as she ran away. Giving chase, it only took a few seconds to realize she was actually much faster than some of the other twerps and changed target to her little sister. Quickly the teen boy was on Abby, tagging her on the back, but accidentally hitting her hard enough that she fell to the grass-covered ground. The 4'11" girl toppled to the ground, causing the breath in Kennedy's chest to catch as he saw her roll over and see tears in her eyes. He didn't see so much as a scratch on her, but he didn't want her running off and crying to Miss Mia. Hey, you are okay. The girl sniffled and shook her head, holding onto her left leg like it was hurt. I want mommy, take me to her. It was much more of a whine than a command, but one he really couldn't follow or didn't want to. You don't need to go see her, your leg looks okay. Also, Kennedy nodded to himself. Remember, we get to go have ice cream after this if we are all good. So you can't go crying to her if you want ice cream. Still holding her knee, Abigail pressed and held her lips together in a line. I want a chocolate ice cream cone dipped in chocolate. She mostly said to herself, but loud enough that Kennedy could hear. See, so you can't go to her or you won't get any. Kennedy knelt down to be closer to eye level with the little girl sitting there. How about we go back to playing? I want your shoes. What? He wasn't sure he heard her correctly, because it was the oddest request he had ever gotten. I want your shoes, you can only run fast because you have sneakers on. Abigail said, crossing her arms over her chest. I'm not giving you my sneakers, I'm not going around barefoot. You little brat, he added mentally. He watched her take in a deep breath, holding it in as her lips started to quiver and more tears came to her eyes. Oh no, don't do that. He realized she was making herself cry as she stood up, looking around for her mother. He was sure. Okay, you win. You can have my sneakers. He plopped down on his butt before pulling the shoes off without unlacing them. The last time he tied them it felt like the laces on his beat-up sneakers were ready to snap, so he tied them in a knot and just forced his foot in and out without touching them. "Here, take them," he said, holding out one of his shoes to the girl, who turned around with a big smile on her face. A few of the crocodile tears ran down her cheeks. "Thank you, Kennedy." Abigail sat back down on the grass, taking off her black thick-strapped Mary Jane shoes. He was about to correct her about his name, but just waved his hand in the air, knowing it was a lost cause. Kennedy then started to get up when he heard another familiar voice. "Where are you going?" The voice of McKenzie was dripping with attitude, an attitude he wanted to shove back in her stupid face. They had just started playing this game, that he only did to show her how much faster he could run than her, but he was more than done dealing with the two. To get a drink and then take a piss. No. She was still behind him, so Kennedy turned his head to face her as he stood up, slowly turning to face the girl 4 years younger than him. "No? You are not the boss of me or anyone, McKenzie." He instantly moved one hand up to protect his left ear as she stepped into his personal space, raising her right hand. He was relieved when she didn't try to grab his ear, instead she poked him in the chest. "I said no, because you can't go walking around in just those socks, you will get a hole in them and you are only borrowing them." Kennedy looked down at his sock-covered feet, frowning. From his position he could see the younger Adams wiggling on the ground happily as she kicked her feet in the air a few times, his shoes on her feet. "Not like I have another option now that Abby stole my shoes." "I did not. You gave them to me, stop fibbing." Kennedy shifted so he could easily see both girls that he was more than fed up with. Abby was getting to her feet and puffing out her cheeks as she accused him of lying. It wasn't like he wanted to give her the shoes, the brat gave him an ultimatum, not that she knew the word. "You can put on Abby's shoes, if your shoes fit her, then hers will fit you," McKenzie said, pointing down to the black shoes sitting neatly together on the thick grass. "PFFF, that isn't happening." McKenzie gave him a big smile before turning to her little sister. "Abby, do you want to tell Mom that Kennedy is ripping your clothes on purpose?" The smaller girl thought about it for a second and then shook her head. "No." McKenzie let out a heavy sigh, while Kennedy gave her a smug grin that she wasn't able to manipulate Abby to get him in trouble. "I will if you give me your fruit roll-up snack. I saw a bunch of them in the snack box. You can have half of mine." Abby nodded her head excitedly and went right back to looking for her mom in the group of adults. "Come on. I will just take the socks off, then there is no problem, right?" It was Mackenzie's turn to fold her arms over her chest, like she had seen her mom do countless times when she was serious about something she said and they weren't listening. "Without shoes on you could step on something and get hurt. Are you sure you are older? Because you don't think things through. Abby, don't go to your mom. The two of you win, for now, I will put on your shoes." Abby had just spotted her mom at a picnic table with 2 other adults, her back was to them. "Kenzie said she wouldn't give me half her fruit roll-up. I want your fruit roll-up or I'm still telling." "Yeah, I don't care, sure whatever." He was so over these two and this day, and he didn't care one way or the other about some fruit roll. The idea of giving fruit for a snack he thought was stupid, but if she wanted it she could have it. What he wasn't expecting was for Abby to come up and give him a hug. "Thank you. Let's go play so I can go fast." She didn't wait for an answer, just ran off pumping her arms as she went. The exchange baffled Kennedy. She acted like he was giving her a gift when really she was blackmailing him. He made eye contact with McKenzie before sullenly putting on the girl's shoes. Looking up at McKenzie, he gave her a glare. "There. Happy now?" While he scowled, she gave him a big smile. "Those look like the right shoes for my new little sister to wear. You can go potty now, but you should probably tell an adult." She smiled a little wider at the end before walking off towards the group of kids who seemed fine continuing to play their game of tag while they argued. He watched her go for a few seconds before standing up in the much younger girl's shoes. Kennedy wiggled his toes in the shoes, taking a few steps as he looked down, hating that they didn't even feel tight on him. He made his way over to the picnic tables to get the drink he wanted, and to get away from the squirts, but definitely not to tell someone he needed to go potty. He wasn't some little kid. Scene 6. Kennedy took an indirect route to the picnic tables. He wanted to stay out of Miss Mia's view so she wouldn't see the shoes he was now wearing. As Kennedy got closer to the cooler labeled drinks, he overheard a conversation he was very much interested in. "I'm sorry, Mr. Matthews, I do appreciate your intentions, but I do believe giving the children chocolate milk on a warm day such as this would be ill-advised." The person talking was a taller man, almost a foot taller than himself and much older. Kennedy figured he was in his 50s with his wrinkles and gray hair and beard. The most striking thing about the man was the eye patch over his left eye, like he was pretending to be some sort of pirate. He wasn't dressed up like one. In fact, he wasn't even really dressed for the park like most of the adults. He wore brown slacks, a white button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and a brown vest. It seemed like he thought not wearing a tie and coat meant he was dressed down for the day, making him seem like a rather uptight person. Especially with him telling the other adult that people couldn't have chocolate milk. "Yeah, I get it, Mr. Bishop. Suppose I wasn't thinking. We all have slips in judgment from time to time. Feel free to put it in the cooler and take it home with you at the end of the day. No harm, no foul and all that." Standing behind the parent that brought the gallon of chocolate milk, Kennedy couldn't get a good look at him, but his focus was more on the object in his hand as he put it away than the person anyhow. With the lid of the cooler snapped shut, Kennedy licked his bottom lip and tried to look nonchalant as he made his way over to it. Inside the blue and white container was ice, various flavors of juice and bottles of water, and then crammed off to the side was the treasure he was after. The gallon of chocolate milk that no one was supposed to have, the taboo of it making it much more enticing. Taking a look over one shoulder and then another, he didn't think anyone was paying particular attention. Picking it up, he tucked it under his shirt, while the borrowed shirt, and slowly started to walk away, doing his best to keep his back to the picnic area. When Kennedy was a good 30 feet from them, he took off running to the park's bathrooms. Darting inside the boys' room, he went into one of the stalls, slamming it shut as he looked at his prize. His mouth watering with what he had claimed as his own. Chocolate milk had been one of those cheap treats foster homes had. They could get milk from the government assistance card things, and adding a little chocolate syrup made it a treat. One place he stayed, they bought it like this, and it was his favorite. The chocolate milk was always thick and delicious. Of course, the people who ran the home would water it down when it was given out to make it go further, but he had never been caught when he snuck a drink or two in order to have it in the pure, perfect form. Some of the older kids he encountered would brag about a beer or a bottle of alcohol they drank or swiped. That stuff tasted awful. For Kennedy, this was the thing to take and brag about, not that he did. Not after the first time where the kids around his age told him he was a baby, some even asking him if he was still drawn from a bottle. He couldn't help it if they were stupid. Why drink something that tastes like mouthwash when this was an option? Removing the cap, Kennedy took a small swallow. As it went down his throat, a big smile came to his face. He didn't need to go out and play with the kids. That had been bad enough. Now he had this and could hide away, actually enjoying the day. So there he sat, drinking directly from the gallon, wishing he had his headphones to make this perfect. He had one encounter where someone was saying girls should use the other bathroom. It made him look at his feet and frown. After that, he just picked up his feet whenever someone came in, ignoring them if they tried the door to the stall. The feeling of bliss hadn't subsided as he got down to half the gallon, but his stomach did feel incredibly full. Holding the chocolate milk up to face level, he let out a sigh, tipping it back one last time. Kennedy knew he couldn't drink anymore and tried to think how he could hide it away so none of the snot-nosed kids could have his treasure. Leaving the stall, he looked around the bathroom, not coming up with any real good ideas, and ended up moving the large trash can up against the sink counter to hide the half-drunk gallon in its shadow. He took a few shuffling steps from side to side to check how well hidden it was, deciding it wasn't the best, but if no one was looking for it, then probably no one would find it. Taking the time to wash his face, Kennedy noticed a few spots where his beverage dripped onto the shirt. Serves the girls right for making him wear a girly shirt like this anyhow, he figured, smirking a bit before he left the relative privacy of the bathroom. Feeling so full and bloated, Kennedy slowly walked toward the picnic area. He wasn't going to go to them, but the trees off to the side. The idea of leaning up against one and relaxing sounded like a much better idea than going out to the playground or whatever everyone else was doing. They weren't letting him actually help like he intended, and he was done with the kids. That was when he heard someone behind him raising their voice. "Young miss, please do not go off on your own and stay with the group." Kennedy paid little attention, till he heard a whistle being blown. The shrill sound easily got his attention, so he turned around to see the same old man with the eye patch, his attention fully on him and not the two girls by his sides. "Young miss, come over here and stand with your peers and wait for the other girls to be done in the restroom." Kennedy narrowed his eyes looking at the geezer. He stomped one of his feet on the ground as he marched towards the man, his stomach feeling like it was sloshing about with each step. Being called a girl was just too much. He didn't want to let Miss Mia down or get in trouble when he promised her he would be good, but this had gone on too much. "Look, pirate man, I'm not some stupid little girl. Or can you not tell that with one eye?" The outburst felt good, and Kennedy was ready to tell him off more when the man ended up moving much faster than he ever would have expected. The spry older man took a few quick steps with his long legs getting only inches from him, forcing Kennedy to look up into his one brown eyes. He had a grimace on his face and an intense look that felt like someone how having only the one eye made his gaze much more powerful. The words Kennedy was about to say died on his tongue before they could reach his lips. "I don't recognize you, so I know you are not one of my students. Now, young miss, tell me your name and who your parents are so we can handle your show of disrespect properly." Oh, she made Mr. Bishop super angry. Kennedy could hear one of the girls saying behind him. "Ken and I came here with Miss Mia." Kennedy thought the man was going to belt him across his cheek like he had gotten countless times for speaking his mind. He knew upsetting some people by speaking up would cause that to happen. Kennedy rather just coast by and not be noticed, but he wasn't some little girl. "Your name is Ken and you are here with Mia?" "Mia, Mia Adams." "That makes you Kennedy Adams, yes?" Kennedy nodded his head and then shook it no. He only signed up with their last name because Miss Mia had said to. "This is not a trick question made to confound you, young Mississippi. Are you Kennedy Adams, or are you not?" The 55-year-old man turned to give a single-eyed glare to the now three girls behind him, another coming out of the bathroom. His look was enough to stop their snickering. "I am, but..." "No." The older man's stern rebuttal cut Kennedy off. There is no need for a but, it was a simple yes or no question. "I would bring you to your mother and inform her of your behavior, but she has already left for the day." She left. Kennedy was shocked at the news and immediately disregarded it, deciding the man was an ass and a liar. Indeed. She had an emergency at the office and had to leave in a hurry. "Do not fret, you are in good hands. Now." Bishop clapped his hands together twice, making sure each of the children he walked to the restroom were with him. "Let us move back as a group and then we can get started on our first game of the day before lunch." Kennedy started following the man who was obviously in charge here, trying to scan the area ahead for Miss Mia. He would like to think if she was going to leave, she would have let him know, but he had also been in the bathroom for a while. Glancing back at the man, he wanted to try and clear things up. The man hadn't actually introduced himself, but one of the brats called him Mr. Bishop. Mr. Bishop, there is something you should know. Everyone thinks I'm some little girl, but they're wrong. Kennedy had moved ahead of the man, turning to walk backwards and pointed off to the men's side of the bathrooms, ready for someone to actually treat him like the adult he almost was. Bishop Chapman turned his head to the side to see off where the girl was pointing and nodded. Young miss, if some of the other children are teasing you then we can talk privately, but I did see you coming out of the boys' restroom. If you felt you needed to hide then you should come to an adult. Now, how about we continue the conversation when others can't overhear? Bishop held his one eye closed for the count of 2 seconds, already hearing the other girls whispering about her being a tattletale or some other such nonsense. She wasn't doing herself any favors with fitting and coming out talking like this. No, no one is picking on me. The brats were annoying him, but he was older than all of them, he wouldn't let any of the brats bully him. That is splendid to hear, if something were to ever happen though. Please know you can speak to me or any adult. Kennedy's face turned red in frustration, the man wasn't taking him seriously. He was thinking about what exactly to say to the man so he knew where he could stuff his advice when someone ran into him hard enough for him to fall to the ground with them from the field tackle. He ended up in a tangle of limbs as Abigail held onto him giggling like the surprise attack was a game. Get off of me, Abby! Kennedy pressed his palm to her shoulder, prying the little leech off him. He scowled at her while she gave him a big smile. Miss Adams, Bishop said in a stern voice, not appreciating the display of violence. Abigail stood up, brushing the grass from her clothes, and gave the man a big smile. Hi, Mr. Bishop. She waved her hand at him to say hi like she hadn't seen him till just now. Yes, hello. Please be more careful with your sister, we do not want anyone to get injured today. Abby nodded at him happily, it was enough that he carried on. They were close enough to the picnic tables that he didn't feel he needed to fret. Why did you tackle me? Kennedy let out a burp that made its way up his throat unbidden as his full stomach sloshed around. Covering his mouth in case another belch came out, he noticed the girl was wearing a pair of white sandals. Wait, where are my shoes? Looking down at her feet, Abigail wiggled her toes before looking back to him with a small pout on her face. They made me run fast, then the shoelaces broke so I threw them away. Don't worry though, because Mommy had a backup pair of shoes for me in her bag. See? She held up her foot to show off her sandals, not considering her actions at all. You threw my shoes in the trash. What am I supposed to wear now? Abigail looked at him confused, pointing down to her shoes that he was wearing. You are already borrowing mine, silly. Abby. Kennedy clenched his fists, knowing he shouldn't hit her, even if she deserved it for blackmailing him to have his shoes and then throwing them away. Girls, it is time to come play a game with everyone, we are playing soccer. Abigail looked over to see Jolene Chapman, the boss at her daycare, at her mother's office and wife to her vice principal. Hi, Mrs. Jolene. The woman was walking toward the pair, close enough that Abigail didn't need to yell, but after seeing her and hearing it was time to play a group activity she couldn't help herself. Come on, it's soccer time, she said to Kennedy, who only shook his head. I'm not going to play soccer. I'm afraid sitting out isn't an option today, Kennedy. This is a group activity and you are part of the group. I said, I'm not going to play. He repeated his words slower and with more emphasis so the old woman he first met when he checked in would understand it wasn't going to happen. What he wasn't expecting was for her to grab him by the wrist and pull him forward and give him a single slap to his ass. It was hard enough that he felt a sting, but it didn't really hurt him. The shock of it had dumbfounded him though. Kennedy's eyes went wide and his mouth hung open as the giantess pulled him along. While your mother does not like her children being spanked, she has given me permission on those rare occasions her daughters are not doing as they are told and are talking back. Now come along nicely or I will be telling her about your bad attitude. He wanted to say something, he wanted to pull his arm from her, though he wasn't sure he had the strength for that. Mostly he was just having trouble forming a thought. The audacity of this woman to strike him was one thing, the other was his instincts honed over years in the system telling him to comply, look meek so he didn't get hit anymore. Being pulled along, he looked behind himself, past Abby, who looked incredibly happy, as she skipped along behind him. His gaze settled on the stone building where he sat in a stall not long ago drinking the gallon of chocolate milk. Why didn't I stay in the bathroom? It was perfect there. He whispered to himself, feeling the leather strap of Abby's Mary Jane shoes with each step, reminding him that his only pair of shoes was now gone. Scene 7. Standing out on the soccer field, Kennedy covered his eyes as he looked up at the sun. The higher it got in the sky, the warmer it was getting. He put one hand over his stomach as it gurgled unhappily with its current contents. Stupid sun, stupid game, stupid park. Kennedy kicked at the grass, feeling even more annoyed seeing the girl's shoes he somehow ended up wearing. He was going to continue with his list of things he was unhappy with, but the next thing on the list, his current shoes, only made him think of the other girly items he had on, so he stopped his list to not dwell on them. Keeping one hand on his stomach, he looked around at the kids around him. The adults had put the older kids on the goalie role and the back line, all except for him. Kennedy found himself standing next to Abby in the front while the pirate guy held the soccer ball and went on about the rules. He already knew how to play the game and already knew he hated it, so he ignored the man while he made his plans for what he was going to do once the ball was put on the ground. When the ball was put down, Kennedy was already moving before the sound of the whistle came to indicate it was time to start. Looking down at his foot as it touched the ball, Kennedy grimaced seeing his foot in the thin girly socks and black Mary Jane shoes. He rolled the ball backwards, then kicked the ball to his left with the inner side of his right foot, moving the ball away from Abby, who was on his right. The girl was trying to play soccer in sandals, white sandals with a little flower on the front, and after she had blackmailed him out of his shoes and then thrown them away. He made a promise to himself that he wouldn't be trading again, that he was going to get even with the little brat. The move with the ball threw the three others on the front line into disarray. He could hear them screeching and laughing in delight as they tried to follow him. Kennedy did not like soccer, but it wasn't because he couldn't do it or do it well. Because of his build, it was one of the few sports he could really play, though anyone else in his age group always towered over him. He hated it because he was good at it, and all that would get him is more bruises and maybe another trip to the hospital to have another cast put on one of his limbs. He had done it twice so far in his short life. Kennedy felt often ignored, and he had in turn ignored schoolwork and foster parents who really didn't care about what he was doing. He had spent many hours in a backyard or on the sidewalk practicing how to move the ball. Being good at the sport while everyone else towered over him meant he got hurt, and that meant it was just another sport he couldn't play. Now though, he kicked the ball forward and more to the left, moving rapidly away from the younger kids. When one girl in dark brown cargo shorts and a deep green shirt with short hair and an almost neon pink cast on her arm got in his way, Kennedy popped the ball between her legs. Getting past her, Kennedy had no problem getting the ball into the net. The boy guarding, who looked maybe 13 to Kennedy, didn't seem to know that he should stick more towards the middle of the net instead of coming out towards him, but at least the kid was paying attention. Turning back around as the whistle was sounded, Kennedy did a small fist pump, giving the girl he had kicked the ball through her legs a smile and a wink. Better luck next time. He didn't want to play this with little kids, he wanted to play with people his own age, but also wanted to not get hurt. If they were going to make him play with the kids, then he planned to make it as one-sided and boring as possible. When he got back to his starting position, he rolled his eyes when Abby came up to him with her cheeks puffed out. "I want the ball this time." Wiping a few beads of sweat from his forehead, Kennedy put his hand back over his stomach as it protested against the running he had just done. "You can have it." "I can." Kennedy nodded to her question. "Sure you can, Abby, you can do anything you want. All you have to do is get to the ball before me, Bet it would be easier if you had my running shoes on. Abigail looked down at her feet, twisting one to the side like she was inspecting them. They did make me run faster, but they broke, the 8-year-old half to herself. You need to get new ones so I can run fast again. He didn't bother to ask the girl why she wasn't wearing her own sneakers or if she even brought them here. He really didn't want to talk to her at all. That is the plan, Kennedy said, turning to look at the ball before his attention was brought back to his foster sister as she tugged on his shirt. Next time we can get you something pretty, Abby said, thinking of some light-up sneakers one of her classmates had. He glowered at her, but wasn't expecting to see a similar expression on her face. What? What did you get on my shirt? Looking down at the shirt he had borrowed from the girl, he saw a few tiny spots from the chocolate milk and one larger one. Not wanting this to be another incident, he leaned closer to her to whisper. I can't tell you yet, it is a secret, but if you can promise to keep a secret, I will tell you later. He could see the wariness in her eyes, but the way she was fighting to control her smile, he knew he had her. I can keep a secret, she whispered back, eyes wide at the idea of being in on a secret, and nodded her head. Good, then I will tell you later, and the two of us will have a big secret to keep. When he saw the smile she was fighting back, Kennedy pointed over to her starting position. He was surprised that no one had told them to get to their places yet, but looking around it seemed there had to be some child wrangling to keep the game going. He ended up standing around fidgeting, looking back up to the sun, cursing it for making stomach so unhappy. When the game started once again, Kennedy wasn't as quick to get to the ball before the one of the others, the same kid he had kicked the ball through their legs in the previous play, and while he got control of the ball, the little brat had kicked him firmly in the shin, and he was positive they had done it on purpose. Moving the ball around instead of trying to go for a goal, Kennedy popped the ball up so it hit the girl in the face before falling back to the ground where he could take control again. He had kicked the ball a little harder than he intended, but that was what the little shit got for playing with fire. Running off down the field with the ball, Kennedy was having to work a little harder to get past the girl with the cast. When he had just moved past her, something hit him from behind, shoving him forward and causing the soccer ball to move away out of his control. Looking behind him, the kid with the cast that he had gotten even with was there, looking upset, tears in her eyes as she shoved him again. Kennedy was about to fully turn around, losing full sight of the ball as the another kid he hadn't been worried about was trying to get around, kicked the ball to try and pass it to a teammate, but with no skill at controlling the ball it whooshed through the air, landing home solidly into Kennedy's stomach. The impact to his belly when he wasn't prepared, along with it already being upset, caused its contents to seek freedom, up through his throat and out his mouth. Kennedy's chocolate milk came back up with a vengeance, the dark liquid covering the front of his shirt and going down his pants. Kennedy dropped to his knees, one hand over his stomach where the unexpected blow came and the other to help hold him up as he coughed and continued to empty his stomach. He suddenly felt miserable. The hit from the ball wasn't that bad, he just wasn't prepared for it, making his stomach revolted, having Kennedy heave the stolen chocolate milk he had consumed out onto the field, leaving the diminutive teen feeling weaker and tired. At some point while getting sick, he felt hands rubbing his back and soothing words. He thought he heard Miss Mia's voice, but it turned out to just be McKenzie he had heard. Both her and Abby were rubbing his back while other kids had loosely gathered around. It will be okay, came the firm voice of a man. Kennedy assumed it was the pirate. Jolene, dearest, can you take her to get cleaned up? I will get something to help calm her stomach. Kennedy moved from his knees onto his ass, closing his eyes, feeling like somehow the sun had gotten brighter. He really wished they would stop talking to him like he was a girl, but when he opened his mouth he shut it quickly when his stomach threatened another around. Take my hand and we will get you all cleaned up, okay? Kennedy opened his eyes just a sliver to see the dark-haired woman with glasses that had given him a swat to the ass earlier. He didn't want to take her hand, but he felt disgusting. Not just on the inside after running around in the sun after drinking half a gallon of chocolate milk, but also on the outside now that he was covered in his sick. Jolene took the hand the girl held out hesitantly and pulled her to her feet. "Just follow me and I will take care of you." Kennedy groaned, his stomach doing a little flip as he stood up. "I don't feel good." "We can come help," McKenzie offered. "No." Jolene looked down at the protesting girl, giving her a lopsided smile. Poor thing doesn't want anyone to see her looking like this, she thought before shaking her head. "I am sure we both appreciate your offer, girls. Right now, though, I have this handled. The two of you stay here." Kennedy shuffled along with the woman, eyes downcast to avoid the overbearing glare of the sun. His stomach no longer felt bloated, but now it felt much, much worse. "I don't feel." "Ah." Kennedy repeated his early statement, groaning instead of finishing the sentence. He hadn't even noticed the man with the eye patch, Bishop Chapman, coming up to hand over a red bag with a white cross on it. Along with it, he also gave his wife the bag Mia had brought with her to the park and to give his wife a kiss on the cheek. Kennedy only groaned that they came to a stop momentarily. Jolene tugged the sick girl along with her into the woman's side of the park's bathroom. One of the fluorescent lights was out, the second gave more than enough light to see in the room, but it left it darker than she would have liked, and made her think the place was dirtier than it looked. First thing she did was put the bags on top of the closest sink and dug into the first aid bag. Pulling out a pink bottle, she filled the cap with its contents and put it into the girl's hands. "Drink this, dear, it will help make your tummy feel better." Kennedy was happy to take anything that was given if it kept him from puking again. He titled the cap back, drinking down the chalky substance without complaint. He then felt the older woman's hand on his forehead. It doesn't feel like you have a fever. I think it would be best if you come sit in the shade till after lunch. Too much excitement and an upset tummy don't go well together in the sun, but just in case it is an allergy, I would like you to take this pill." Kennedy nodded slowly, taking the small pink pill she offered and the water bottle she had hooked to her hip when she held it out. "Good, now shall we get you out of those filthy clothes and into something more fitting?" Looking at himself in the mirror, Kennedy saw how big of a mess he looked. It matched how he felt. Never in his life had he thrown up on himself, but today he had, and it befouled his shirt and jeans. He was so engrossed by the gross sight he didn't even look at how his hair had been styled. "Off with these now," Jolene said as she helped remove the shirt. As it pulled over Kennedy's head, the scrunchie in his hair fell to the floor. Looking down at it, he frowned at the object, disliking Miss Mia using that in his hair. She was right that it kept his hair out of his face, a problem he had been having since she made him shampoo and wash his hair. Kennedy was about to bend down to pick it up when he was stopped by the woman unbuttoning his pants. "Leave that there for now," Jolene said when the girl started to move. He was slow to react, not thinking anything about standing in front of this woman without a shirt, but a spike of panic ran through him as she reached down, unbuttoned his jeans and pulled down his zipper without so much as asking. Kennedy grabbed the top of his jeans to hold them up. "Dear, you need to let go so we can change your clothes." "No need to be shy, I'm here to help." "You don't want to go back outside looking and smelling like that, do you?" Kennedy frowned, his lip quivering. Her words were gentle, making him less obstinate and more embarrassed. Embarrassed that he was going to get undressed in front of this woman he didn't know. Embarrassed that he had made a fool out of himself in front of all those kids, embarrassed for getting sick to begin with. All of it made him feel small, and his instincts honed from many years in the system kicked in, making him want to act compliant so nothing else bad would happen. Kennedy's cheeks grew red as she picked him up so that he sat on the counter as she worked the jeans past his feet that were still in Abby's shoes. The ease of picking him up reinforcing his current diminished mood. Kennedy had completely forgotten he was wearing a pair of her pink panties, his hands covering his crotch. "Everything is going to be okay, dear, I promise." We are going to get you into a change of clothes and soon the medicine will make you feel better. Do you trust me? Jolene saw how the girl narrowed her eyes before looking away. Kennedy wasn't the first child she had interacted with that was from the foster system, so she knew trust was hard-earned. It broke her heart that anyone had made this little girl like that. Stepping away, she pulled the bag her boss, Mia, had brought for change of clothes for her daughters and pulled out a yellow cotton dress. The nervous boy sat still where he was, only seeing her holding something yellow from the corner of his eye, not wanting to look at the woman to draw more of her attention. Hands in the air, please. Jolene bunched up the dress to make it easier to slip over the girl's head. Kennedy complied as she put a bright yellow shirt over his head. After wearing the pink panties and a shirt with pink on it had made him think of it as least favorite color when he thought very little about the subject previously. With how bright this shirt was, yellow was next on the list. He thought she was going to bring him a pair of pants or shorts next, but instead she started to mess with his hair. The brush running through his strawberry blonde locks felt good, giving him a small amount of peace. Closing his eyes, Kennedy tried to ignore how his stomach felt, his emotional day, and just focus on what she was doing. The act was just as soothing as it was when Miss Mia did it. The only thing missing was her humming. Being touched and groomed was a simple act, but it made him feel, at least in those moments, that he was cared for. It was incredible. That woman had the power to make him actually relax, to feel welcome. When the brushing stopped, he felt something pinch around his head. Opening his eyes, he reached up to touch it as the woman picked up one of his legs, adjusting the socks so they folded down. He was about to ask the glasses-wearing woman about what she put in his hair when she picked him up and put him down back on the floor facing her. "Do you remember my name?" It was easy for Kennedy to look into the woman's light blue eyes as she squatted down to be eye level. He looked away from her, down to himself. Without answering, Kennedy felt the shirt she put him in fall lower, his eyes showing him that he wasn't wearing a shirt at all, but a yellow dress that hung to his knees. Past that were his bare legs, the borrowed socks with frills folded down, and the Mary Jane shoes. He quickly looked back up, horrified that she had put him in one of Abby's dresses. "I'm Jolene Chapman. You can call me Mrs. Jolene if you like. It is okay if you do not trust me yet, dear, but I want you to know I would be happy to be your friend." He heard her speaking in that gentle voice. Scene 8. No, 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 no. This cannot be happening, Kennedy thought as he looked from himself to the mirror in the bathroom. He had a yellow and white headband on his head that matched the dress he now wore. He was wearing an 8-year-old girl's dress, panties, socks, and shoes. The old bat had done this to him and looked so pleased with herself for doing it. Kennedy swallowed hard, his upset stomach forgotten, as he picked up his discarded jeans and the shirt. Sure, the shirt was also Abby's, but it was 1,000, no, 1,000,000 times better than what he was wearing now. Soon as he had them in his hands, though, the older woman gave him that frustrating smile of hers. She was enjoying his humiliation. She wasn't the first adult to do so. He once had a foster mother that made him beg her to prepare him something to eat. It was only when she was in her cups, but he clearly remembered her laughing at him, pinching his cheeks. "You are a great helper, Kennedy, good job," Jolene said, taking the clothes from the girl's grasp and throwing them in the trash. They were covered in puke and what looked like chocolate. There was no helping the garments. "No, no, 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 no." Kennedy held out his hand, reaching for the clothes as they fell into the filthy park's trash can. "It is okay, no need to be upset. I promise your mom won't be upset at you. Everyone gets sick. I promise everything will be okay." He knew everything would not be okay. His heart started to beat, faster and faster as his body trembled. Kennedy had his eyes locked on the trash can where his jeans, the last of his male clothes, were. He didn't even notice when the older woman had taken his hand and started to lead him out of the bathroom. His head just swiveled to keep the kin in his sights, him not reacting at all until he lost sight of it, as they passed through the heavy metal door to the outside. At that second, Kennedy became very much aware of where he was and how everyone was going to see him, making him pull his hand from her and run back inside. "Is there something else that is wrong, dear?" Jolene frowned, hoping the girl wasn't about to get sick once more. I can't go out there like this." Kennedy motioned to himself as he stood in the safety of the woman's bathroom. Jolene pressed her lips together in a firm line. The girl was obviously a tomboy and didn't want others to see her in a dress. Heavens know why when she looked so adorable, but from other children she had dealt with that had grown up in the foster care system, she knew it was more common for them to have a lower self-esteem, and she was sure the kid not feeling well just made things worse. "You look pretty as a picture, Kennedy. I am willing to bet you get more than a few compliments. Now come on. Take my hand and let's go back so we watch your new friends finish the game. I bet you are excited to see if your team wins after you got the first goal of the game. You were doing so well, you are such a brave girl, playing when you were feeling sick." Kennedy shook his head, feeling a psychic stab every time she referred to him as a female. "Kennedy, we don't have time for you to act like a little madam. I would love it if you could trust me, but I am the adult here and you are going to have to listen to me." Kennedy could sense her mood changing. It made him want to hide or just comply so she wouldn't be mad, wouldn't yell, wouldn't do something worse, but he just couldn't go out there looking like this. It would be the end of his life if he did. His thoughts, his emotions, and the situation caused his lip to quiver. "No, I'm not going," he yelled, making a move to dash into a bathroom stall, before he was caught by the elbow and pulled back. His eyes opened wide in panic as he felt a firm hand come down on his rear end, causing his entire body to freeze up. The blow wasn't hard enough to cause him any pain, but the acoustics in the bathroom made it sound like a much harder slap than it was. "I do not have time for a tantrum right now, and you are much too old to be having one. Now come along before you make me cross, little miss." Kennedy had been hit much harder than that, but the blow was enough to remind him of what could happen, what had happened in the past, making all the fight drain from his body. Jolene was happy the light slap was enough to get the girl's attention. She didn't want to have to do anything more drastic than that, but if the girl was trying to run and lock herself in a bathroom stall, telling her she had to stand with her nose in the corner wasn't going to be an effective method to get her to stop. Leaving the bathroom, she sat Kennedy down at one of the wooden tables with bench seats that had plenty of shade and an unobstructed view of the soccer field where the children continued their game. "You be a good girl and sit here. I will be back with some water for you to sip on, and if you don't give me any more trouble, I will not tell your mom about you throwing a tantrum." Kennedy nodded. "A good little girl." Kennedy repeated her words. His stomach was feeling much better after what she had given him, but that phrase still made it twist itself almost into a knot. He didn't want to be hit again, and he really didn't want Miss Mia to know about any of this. Then a tiny smile crossed his face. The woman kept referring to her as his mom. Miss Mia had said how she wanted to adopt him, make him a true member of the family, and he hoped for it. She was attractive, an honest-to-God MILF, but most of all, she really was kind to him. He wanted it to happen. He had hope. The little fire in him that wanted something better for himself was soon covered up by darker thoughts, making him frown. No one he had been with had really wanted to help him, or even really want him. Some wanted the money from the state, one wanted a playmate for their kid. Most of the time he had no idea. He would be fine if she didn't actually want him. She might just be playing nice with him so she could get a few extra dollars to get things for her girls. He only had a year left before he would be free to do whatever he wanted. Kennedy paid no mind to the kids running about, how the pirate-looking guy had to keep ushering one kid back onto the field as he thought of his current home life. What would she buy with the money she was getting thanks to him being there? Their house made it look like she was already well off. Maybe some clothes for her girls? She had told him she was taking him shopping, but that hadn't happened. She had said they would decorate his room the way he wanted, but that hadn't happened. Maybe she would buy a few more puzzles. He really didn't like puzzles, they were boring, but it had been fun sitting at the dinner table with the three others doing it all together and getting a mug of hot cocoa. Ken shook his head. Miss Mia wasn't the type to use him, but it didn't mean she didn't need the money. She left today on a day off to go work, and that could mean she needed the money, and if so, that could mean she couldn't afford to decorate his room or get him new clothes. Ken kicked his feet up off the ground, holding them together in the air, moving his feet a little before letting them fall, his eyes watching as they did. I'm sitting here dressed in a dress. The recent swat to his ass had him compliant, but he really couldn't let anyone see him like this. How am I just sitting here out in the open? Can I sit here? Kennedy blinked a few times, his mind felt slow and his eyelids heavy, and he hadn't really noticed. Kennedy didn't even notice the kid motioning to his right side when they asked. The voice had pulled him out of his thoughts, however, and made him realize how suddenly tired he was, that in a spike of panic went through him that someone had noticed him out here dressed like he was pretending to be a girl. He was just about to get up and go hide, hoping the old woman didn't notice, and now it was too late. The person talking to him was that girl from before, the one he had hit in the face with the soccer ball. Brown shorts, a green t-shirt, dark brown hair that was almost black, that was wild, almost touching her shoulders and would probably go past it if she were to brush it out, Kennedy figured. His hair had been much longer than he thought when Miss Mia took a brush to it, getting the knots out hurt, and he disliked how it looked, but he loved her brushing his hair. Kennedy's attention refocused on the girl, after getting sidetracked. Her large eyes were brown, but had this golden quality to it almost. He was sure they would captivate boys' attention when she got older. Looking at her now, with that pink cast on her right hand, it made him feel a bit guilty for kicking the ball into her face. Even if she had kicked him in the shin, she was a kid and he was almost an adult. No. Kennedy said firmly. He needed to get rid of the kid first, then he was going to go through bags if he had to in order to get out of this dress. That spot doesn't look as clean. Good call. Thanks. Kennedy heard excitement in her voice. It wasn't nearly as high-pitched as some of the other girls he had encountered today, and she was decently tall for a squirt. It was incredibly annoying to tell someone no to a question, for them to turn around and ignore the answer. You look nice in your dress. PFFFF, it is Abby's dress. Keep calm, Ken, keep calm. She thinks you are a girl. Think. She has already sat down. Do I just get up and walk away? What if she follows? Shit. He pointed off to Abby as she played soccer, was on the field. She seemed to have enough of kicking and had picked up the ball and karate chopped it so it flew past a few other kids. If you like it, you can have it. I really don't want to trade clothes, but hers would be a lot better than what I'm wearing now. God, am I really trying this? I'm betting she would be mad if you gave it away, and... The kid laughed, holding the back of their head with their good hand. I can't imagine what my mom would think if I showed up wearing it. I'm Max, by the way. Okay, that didn't work. What else can I do? Kennedy, but everyone calls me Ken, or they should. Kennedy went to hold out his right hand, but changed it to his left to not try and shake hands with the kid's broken arm. How old are you? Could I get her to find me something instead? Nice to meet you, Ken. I'm 13 and I'm in class with McKenzie. It sounds like you can't get people to call you Ken. Don't worry, I will if that is what you want to be called. I think Kennedy is a pretty name, but... Max laughed again. But I understand, my parents call me Maxmas most of the time. Saying it is the name of a great Roman general or something that is an ancestor, but I think they just like that old movie about the gladiator. Maximus? Kennedy said in a small voice, realizing now that he had thought this was a girl because of the pink cast, when it was a 13-year-old boy, who was taller than him. Not by a lot, he was still about 2 inches shorter than McKenzie, but it still hurt sitting next to a 13-year-old boy who was 3 inches taller than his 5-foot height. That is a boy's name and, you have a pink cast. Yep. Hey, can I show you something? Kennedy let out a long yawn when he opened his mouth to speak. The medicine is making me tired. Whatever that pink pill was to help me feel better is working, but it is also making my body demand sleep. Sure, but then I have a favor to ask. Kennedy replied. It hadn't been longer than a minute from when he realized how tired he was, but even in that short time the need for sleep had gone up. Kennedy figured if he let the boy. How could he have made that mistake? Let him show something off and then he would get him to go find some gym pants or something from someone. Geez, I'm tired. Kennedy forced his eyes open wide to fight off the feeling. He wasn't some child like those on the field, needing a nap, and he definitely wasn't going to take one out here when the actual kids weren't. Okay, close your eyes and hold out your finger. Kennedy did as he said. It was much easier to close his eyes than keep them open. As he closed them, he felt something surround the index finger on his left hand. Opening his heavy eyelids back up, he saw his left hand was attached to Max's left hand by their index fingers via a Chinese finger trap. On instinct he tried to pull his hand away, Max doing the same while laughing. Kennedy frowned, moving his hand towards the kid after his mind told him the initial instances were downright stupid. He had seen this little thing before and all you had to do was press your fingers closer together to get out, but as he pushed his hand closer to Max the kid kept pulling his hand back. No, you stupid kid. Look, we are stuck together. Kennedy had ended up scooting closer to the boy on the bench as he tried to get his hand out of the trap, but froze completely like he had earlier when the single smack from the spanking happened in the bathroom. Only this time the cause was so much worse. Kennedy felt Max kiss him on the cheek. I thought he was a girl and he still thinks I'm a girl and he kissed me. You are really pretty. Wanna get married when we grow up? Kennedy's eyes practically bugged out of his head. No, I am not going to marry you or any other boy. Max just smiled, laughing. He went to move his hand to the back of his head, but it only caused Kennedy to be pulled closer to him. Oh, I get it, you don't like boys yet. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere and I won't bring it up again, till we get older. Gritting his teeth, Kennedy responded, without moving his jaw. Joy. The words came out flat, but gave him the chance to get his finger out of the toy when Max stopped pulling his hand away. So what do you like doing for fun? You are what, 11? Or... Max looked at the dress she was wearing, remembering Mackenzie's little sister was close to 4 years younger. 9? Oh, and you asked about this. Max said, raising the hand covered in the pink cast. I'm 17 and I'm not a little girl. And I don't like to do nothing. So a young woman. While I like to run around outside, I find sticks that could look like swords and sand them down and spray paint them to be silver and use my dad's electrical tape to make handles and sword fight. I'm the best with my friends that do it too. I ended up breaking my arm, while the bone near my wrist. Did you know that you have 2 bones in your arm here? Max waved his pink cast-covered arm. Well, I broke one of them, it went through the skin and, well, I was told I shouldn't talk about that. It grosses some people out. A gurgle came from Kennedy's stomach as it churned, mostly settled, but a spike of anxiety came to him when he told this boy that he not only wasn't a girl, but was 17 and he just took it in stride, then declaring him a young woman. He felt more exposed now that he had said who and what he was, a teenage boy dressed up as a little girl, and this kid hadn't even really believed him. If he had, a second wave of panic came through him of people thinking he was some kind of pervert, the kind that would be on the Catch a Predator show. It felt like someone had a volume control knob, turning up his fear as Max kept looking at him with those brownish golden eyes. "Yeah, best if I don't talk about that." Max said, pretty sure he shouldn't have brought it up to a girl at all. "Yeah, well, the doctor only had the pink wrap for the cast in the room I was in, and the lady doctor said how it isn't for boys and would be back." Kennedy felt Max lean closer, his shoulder touching his own. "Colors don't care if you are a boy or girl, so I had her use the pink, and you know what? The color doesn't care, but more girls talk to me now than they did before. I'm actually 10 and that sounds boring, but I would be way better than you at sword fighting." Kennedy blew out a long breath after blurting that out in the middle of the boy's rambling. Max didn't seem to believe him when he told him the truth, but picturing him telling adults just made him think about Chris Hansen stepping out from behind a tree with cameramen for his show to catch him as if he was the predator on the show. The stick, sword fighting, running around with a sword, wood or not, swinging them at one another sounded fun. The sticks would still hurt, so it would feel real, so long as it wasn't with people feet taller than him or twice as wide and with a desire to swing it like a bat to hurt him. No, the more he thought about it, the more he didn't like the idea of the pretend sword fighting. "Yeah. Want to come over sometime and sword fight? I never met a girl who wants to sword fight before." Kennedy shook his head, moving one hand over his body to hold his other forearm. Thoughts of getting Max to do anything for him were forgotten. He needed to just go. He couldn't run from the park, he had nowhere to go, leaving the only other option hiding in the bathroom till it was time to go. Maybe he could fish out his pants if some of the disgusting things in the trash hadn't gotten on them yet. "That's okay, we could play video games. I got that new Avatar war game. My mom said it was too violent for someone my age, but my dad let me get it when I said I would pay for half of it with the allowance I had saved. He told her that if I was mature enough to save my money, then I was mature enough for a video game. The best part was he didn't actually make me pay for any of it. It is so fun! You get to choose an avatar of a god and fight other gods." Kennedy had played the game before, or an older version of it, 2 editions ago, once at an arcade when the people he was staying with dropped him off in an arcade while they went bowling. It was fun, not nearly as fun as the racing game, but that took more quarters and he had to ration what they had given him. It was maybe one of the most fun nights he had ever had, able to play anything he wanted. The topic changed Kennedy's priorities. He was still going to run off, but he wanted to know a little about the game before he did. "Does the new one still have the girl who can fly and shoot lightning?" Max nodded quickly, suddenly getting animated hearing that the cute girl next to him knew about the game. "Oh yeah, but she isn't a girl. She is the avatar of Tempestas, I think, a Roman god. They made her flying cost magic and it is so cool. She has storm clouds come and she can fly around. I like playing as Pluto or a Hades. His story is that he doesn't want to be there, that he has too much work to do, but can't let his brother win." Kennedy continued to talk to him about the video game and a few others he had, becoming enraptured when he wasn't stifling a yawn at some of the new moves and how to do them. He had only learned a little bit when he played the game at the arcade. "The two of you are looking like you are having fun." Both Max and Ken turned to look at the 5'5" redhead that stood in front of them with a sly smile on her face as she looked at her feminized foster brother. She was only coming this way to get a drink as the soccer game they were playing was coming to an end so they could break for lunch. She hadn't even realized the girl with strawberry blonde hair in the yellow dress was Kennedy till she had gotten closer. This was the same brash boy who had locked her in the basement, but she wasn't sure anyone would think of Kennedy as a boy at all. "We were talking about Avatar War and Ken said she would come over to play it with me," the boy said with enthusiasm. "Planning a play date with an older boy, Kennedy?" The way she said it in a teasing manner reminded the blue-eyed boy of the reality of the situation. Max thought he was a girl, he looked like a girl right now, and this boy had kissed his cheek and said he wanted to marry him like he was saying that he was in love or something. "McKenzie, it isn't what you think." Kennedy pinched the skirt of the yellow dress, his stomach starting to feel like it was falling like it had earlier when he jumped from the swing set as he looked at the 13-year-old through his half-lidded eyes. Even as caught up in the conversation as he was, the medicine-created desire had been winning, Max doing most of the talking. I have a pool and I bet my older sister would like the company too. She skipped a year and even though she is 15 is in 10th grade, but she says no one from her classes will hang out with her. The two of you both act alike, so I bet you would be great friends. Kennedy and I both like making new friends. McKenzie said, looking at the boy in the yellow dress, that sly smile still on her face. But what do you mean by we act alike? Her blue-green eyes sliding over to Max. You are both bossy. She tells me what to do at home and you are telling me and just about everyone what to do and how to do it in class. Max said with a shrug and no malice in his voice. Yeah, well, if you did things correctly, I wouldn't have to tell you what to do. You were the one asking me just the other day what page we were on for our reading. If you paid more attention, I wouldn't need to help. Besides, McKenzie raised her hands, slapping them against her thighs, her voice raising just a little bit. You don't even listen to me most of the time. McKenzie, Kennedy said in a small voice. He didn't want her attention on him, he didn't want anyone's attention. He had got caught up in a stupid conversation when he should have been running. He saw the girl's attention move to him, but she held out one finger telling him to wait while she talked to her classmate. Kennedy closed his mouth, feeling like he was in no position to do anything and wondering how many eyes were on him now, but not daring to look. Max shrugged again, smiling as he stood up. That is because you aren't in charge, just like Bria isn't in charge of me. McKenzie was about to tell him that it was fine, that she didn't need to help him anyways, but something else came to mind seeing how close the two were sitting together a moment ago. What if Kennedy asked you to do something? Max looked back at the blonde girl, smiling and a light blush coming to his cheeks. That is different, she is cute and... He didn't get any further as the taller girl talked over him. Wait, are you saying I'm not cute? Max waved both his good arm and the broken one in front of him. No, I'm not saying that at all. Half the boys in class would jump off a bridge if you did it first just so they could keep looking at you. Any indignation, true or false, McKenzie had felt vanished as a blush came to her cheeks. She was giving him a hard time, and no way were boys looking at her. She was plain compared to some of the girls in her class who liked to dress up. She didn't even wear a dress for the last picture day. Oh, I'm okay. She looked away from the shorter boy, holding her hands together in front of her, suddenly not sure what she was supposed to do with them as she stood there. It is lunch time and we are supposed to get cleaned up and Kennedy needs to tinkle. She reached over with both hands, pulling the small boy in a dress to his feet, happy to have something to do with her hands and wondering suddenly what she normally did with them when standing around and talking or why she was suddenly worried about it. We will be back. Where are we going? I don't need to go to the bathroom, and did you say tinkle? Kennedy cried, not really sure what was just happening with the weariness he was fighting. I need to wash my hands before lunch, and girls don't go to the bathroom by themselves, and little girls don't go pee, they go tinkle. Kennedy frowned, pinching the hem of the dress he wore with one hand as the girl pulled him along by the other. But I'm not a girl, he thought while a whimper escaped his lips. Scene 9. Kennedy had once again found himself in the girls' restroom at the park. He had attempted to pull his hand free of the red-headed girl and had almost succeeded before she had stopped walking, turned around still holding his arm and said, "Stop," in a firm voice before continuing on their trek. Once inside he was free from her gorilla-like grip. A 13-year-old girl had no right being as strong as she was, he thought, not wanting to turn that on its head and directing it at himself for weakness. Look, I didn't want to dress like this, he said to his foster sister as she moved over to the sink to wash her hands. Watching her walk away made him realize this was exactly where he was intending to go. He half jumped with his first step towards the trash can to see about pulling out his pants, looking almost like he had started to skip. Kennedy figured the chocolate might stain, but he could rinse off everything else and be fine for a day. You should want to, you look cute, I think. I thought you were cute when I saw you, but this is a different kind of cute. Why are you looking in the trash can? McKenzie asked, her hands dripping water on the floor after washing them. It's empty. I was going to get my pants, Kennedy said, looking inside the large bathroom trash can that had a fresh plastic bag inside, completely devoid of anything. You shouldn't be taking things out of the trash, and you shouldn't keep looking in there. Someone might come in and think you have watched too much Sesame Street and are looking for Oscar. Kennedy balled his hands into fists, the muscles in his arms straining as he turned on the girl who was 5 inches taller than him. I'm not a little kid. I'm not a little girl. McKenzie could feel the rage coming off of the feminized older boy, but it didn't seem to last much longer than the time it took him to say those words, the boy almost deflating like a balloon. In his current state he looked like the things he was claiming not to be and one that was overdue for a nap. Messing with him was a lot of fun, and after today he wouldn't try to do things like lock her in the basement anymore. She crossed her arms and tried to give him a stern expression. You look like a little girl. Your whining makes you sound like a little girl. Max thinks you are a little girl. Miss Jolene and Mr. Bishop think you are one. If it is a duck, then it is a duck. Kennedy furrowed his forehead. That isn't the saying. It means you are a little girl. You are my 10-year-old foster sister. Now, unless you want me to tell everyone you have been pretending all day, you will continue to be what people think you are till we get home. He swallowed, shaking his head hard enough that his hair started to flop around. Her telling everyone would be so much worse. He still would be dressed the way he was, but everyone would think he was a pervert. Not the kind people just avoided, but the kind that brought the police around. He could end up being thrown out of the house he had just gotten in and his last chance before being put in juvie till he was 18. Do you want me to go that bad? McKenzie touched her palm to her chin, 2 fingers pressing on her lips. No, you don't have to go anywhere. Today was just for fun and... She shrugged. Making sure you know you can't push me or Abby around. That and it has been funny. For fun. You think. Kennedy tensed his arm up, swinging it in the air in no particular direction in frustration. Making me dress like this is fun for you and funny. The 13-year-old girl pressed her lips together, before they formed a tight smile as she nodded. I didn't start it, but I have loved it. Who knows, maybe Mom will have to work late and we can go shopping for clothes and you can wear a pretty dress tomorrow too. I can see you don't think it is funny, but just imagine doing it to someone else. Besides, it isn't like Mom is going to let people keep thinking about that. She will just say it was a prank or something. It wasn't funny, not even a little. She was playing with his life, but he could imagine Tommy, another foster child at a place he stayed, all tall and mean, but being in a pink frilly dress would be funny. This was different. I don't want to wear this dress, or any dresses. He mumbled, already knowing he was beat. Kennedy couldn't afford to have the bossy girl tell anyone, let alone everyone. That is because you are a tomboy, but it is nice to see you are coming out to show everyone who you really are, she said with a big smile as she leaned closer to give Kennedy a kiss on the head. Now, before we head back out, I want you to tell me what your name is, how old you are, and that you are a pretty girl. It is important you say that, because everyone thinks so, so you should know it too. Oh, and you still have to say I'm your big sister. Kennedy looked over to the side at the bathroom stalls, considering the same option he tried for with the older woman with glasses. It wouldn't work. McKenzie would crawl under the door, he was sure, and pull him out with her gorilla grip, and then might do exactly as she threatened. I'm Kennedy Towns, I'm 10 years old and a pretty girl. He said glumly, letting out a huff before looking at the girl in front of him, looking like she wasn't pleased. And you are my older sister. That didn't sound like you meant it or were happy about it, try again. She tried to keep that stern look on her face, but she was practically vibrating with glee. Much like her little sister Abigail, McKenzie thought about how the girl acted like that most of the time when she got excited and how she used to most of the time before she learned that was how kids acted, and she didn't want people to think of her like that. Fine. Kennedy held up one finger, walking over to the sink to splash some water on his face, hoping that would help him wake up. Shaking out his hands, he took one last look at the stall doors, to McKenzie and then to the metal door to the outside of the dim room. My name is Kennedy Towns and I'm 10 years old. Everyone says I'm pretty and I think so too. And I just love my big sister McKenzie, because she tells me what to do and I wouldn't be able to do anything without her. He said in a cutesy voice that was so sweet if it was a candy bar someone would get a cavity. Perfect. Take my hand and we can go get some lunch. Kennedy sat down on the bench between McKenzie and Abigail and sadly Max, who sat across from him, along with a few other kids he didn't know the names of. It felt like he was sitting at a kiddie table. That really wasn't anything new, but still with how he looked it made it feel worse. He was given 2 chicken strips, a few squirts of ketchup on the paper plate, along with a few pieces of watermelon, a fruit snack roll-up and a juice box. The exact kind of meal a 17-year-old boy wanted to see in front of him. He ended up dipping the chicken tender into the ketchup after the first bite into the cold piece of meat. It was okay, but not very satisfying to him. He considered himself lucky that his stomach still wasn't upset so he could eat. Though he would rather have more chicken and that chocolate milk he had earlier instead of the fruit punch. With one chicken finger gone and a few pieces of the watermelon in his stomach, Kennedy rested his head on his hand as he sipped from the juice box. He looked across from him. Max already had his plate clean and had gotten up to get 2 more chicken strips. Why did you sit down next to me? You were playing soccer. After Kennedy's question, his words came out like an accusation. The brat was 13. Why would a 13-year-old want to sit next to me when he thought I was? Kennedy thought back to their conversation earlier, fighting with his sleepy mind. Did he think I was 9? Aw, that hurts. I don't want to sit with him at all, and I'm 4 years older than him. Chewing the piece of chicken in his mouth, Max pointed what was left of it in Kennedy's direction a few times before he swallowed. I was hit in the face with a ball, caused my nose to bleed a little, and Mr. Bishop thought I should sit down for a little bit. I didn't do that, just kinda walked around till I saw you. The very girl who struck me with love. The boy held his broken hand over his heart. Kennedy frowned. He wanted to glare too, but the best he could manage was to look at him from under his half-closed eyes. He was actively having to spend energy to stay awake, and with everything he had forgotten how the boy had said they would get married and had even kissed him. A boy had kissed him, it didn't matter if it was on the cheek. The very thought of it caused a blush to come to his cheeks and a desire to wipe away any lingering germs. I don't love you or even like you, Max, don't say things like that. Kennedy felt an elbow hit him in the ribs, an aggressive blow from the red-headed gorilla to remind him to act like a little girl, he was sure. With the blush on his cheeks and him bowing his head slightly from the physical blow, Kennedy looked like an embarrassed girl to Max, who was trying to deny her own feelings. It made him smile as he thought maybe she wasn't too young to like boys. Seeing all of this, Abigail darted her eyes between Kennedy and the boy she just learned the name of when Kennedy said it. She opened her mouth in a wide grin. Max and Kennedy sitting in a tree, kissing. First comes love, then comes marriage, and then comes baby in a baby carriage. Abby, no! Kennedy proclaimed, looking to McKenzie for help and then to Max as he felt more and more distraught. McKenzie leaned back to peer past Kennedy and make eye contact with her little sister. Abby, Do you want to be the flower girl at their wedding? Because I want to be the maid of honor. No. Kennedy whined, pushing his plate away as he rested his elbow on the wooden table before he slumped his head down against it so his face was in the crook of his elbow. Abby said, thinking about what she wanted. I want to hold the rings. McKenzie quirked an eyebrow up. That is the ring bearer and it is usually a boy's job, but I'm sure we can talk Max into letting you do that instead of being the flower girl. Abby scrunched up her nose, looking over at the boy across from them. No, I want to hold the rings and the flowers. Abby declared. Max leaned back, using his hands to hold onto the table so he wouldn't fall from the bench seat as he laughed. Kennedy with his head down, the light from the sun blocked by the table and his arm, he closed his eyes, wishing all of this was just a dream. Sitting there like that he drifted off to sleep, finally losing the battle with the last things he heard being the boy's laugh. Scene 10. Sitting in the hatchback car, McKenzie looked out the window, watching the neat grouping of trees zoom by as Miss Jolene drove them away from the park and closer to downtown where her mother would be currently working. She glanced to her side to see Kennedy and Abby buckled into the car, both leaning on each other and drooling as they slept. It made her smile. Reaching up, she pulled her baby blue headband off, adjusting her hair before putting the cute plastic cat-eared thing back in its place. Abby had insisted on sitting near the window, and with Kennedy still asleep, there had been no arguments about who would sit in the center. She had never seen someone so heavy a sleeper that a park full of kids yelling and squealing wouldn't wake them up, or how it was even a place for Kennedy to fall asleep to begin with. But the little guy had and then didn't stir as lunch was cleaned or when Mr. Bishop helped carry him to his wife's car. She didn't really want to go spend the day in the little daycare her mom had at her office where Miss Jolene worked. She would rather go home. At 13, though, she hadn't been asked, just told that was where they were going till her mom was done working. She took another long look at Kennedy, sleeping next to her little sister. With them leaning on each other, it was easy to see how they both had the same or similar enough to not matter strawberry blonde hair. She tapped one finger to her lips watching them. Really, the two looked more like siblings than she did to her sister. She had the same eyes as her mom, the blue-green, while Abby just had green eyes. Abby had the same hair color as their mom, but she had red hair. The aberration would be Kennedy having blue eyes, but that seemed less of a difference than her hair. If it wasn't for her Aunt Rosie, she could have believed she was the one actually adopted. Looking to the front seat, she curled up the corner of her mouth as she looked at the back of the head of Miss Jolene. She was a nice woman, but she was going to be so cross with them when she found out they had pranked everyone with Kennedy. She had even seen Kennedy before, briefly when they were dropped off before he went and spent time in the gym. While she, a teenager now, had to still stay in the daycare, it was incredibly not fair. McKenzie wondered how much trouble they would get in, how much trouble she would get in when her mom found out. The tiny curl of her lip broadened as she considered a way to pin everything on Kennedy. That way she wouldn't get in any trouble at all. When they pulled into a parking spot and stopped, McKenzie expected Kennedy to wake up just like how Abby was, but still there seemed to be little response from him. Abby smacked her lips together, wiping the chin with her hand to get the drool off, and then wiped it on her skirt. It took her a second to realize where they were, even though she knew before she got in the car where they were going. Seeing Kennedy still sleeping, she pressed her index finger to his cheek a few times, poking him. "Time to wake up," she said cheerfully, but all he did was roll his head the other way, mumbling something. She furrowed her brow, pressing her lips together as she prepared to yell in his ear. "Abigail Adams, don't you dare wake up your sister. She wasn't feeling well earlier, so let her sleep as long as she can." Hearing the voice of the adult made Abby stop what she was going to do. Instead, she pouted. Unbuckling her seatbelt, she tried the door handle, once, twice, 3 times, and she continued to try and open the child safety locked door. Just a second, and I will open that for you." Jolene said, shaking her head in the youngest girl's direction. Mouthing the words thank you to the eldest who sat there waiting. Getting everyone out was easy enough, even if carrying Kennedy was a chore. The girl was only slightly taller than her new little sister, but she did seem heavier, indicating to her she might be ready for a growth spurt like McKenzie had when she was almost 12. With the girl in a yellow dress in her arms, she walked with the two others to head inside. Jolene put Kennedy down in a thicker carpeted play area next to a dollhouse and enough stuffed animals that the kids could hide under them when they wanted. She picked up a generic doll and put it in the girl's lap before walking away to talk with the other woman on shift to watch the children today. The daycare had been empty, making it an easy if boring day for her, but she was here now and she didn't mind staying and intended to let her employee call it an early day. Groggily, Kendi started to wake up. He moved one hand to his eye, rubbing away the things that gathered in the corner of his eye as she slept. Slowly, he started to notice he was leaning on a bunch of stuffed animals, some small, some large, one almost as big as he was, in an area that had dolls and a dollhouse scattered about. The two walls in the corner had pink wallpaper on it with white butterflies. It was like someone thought of what it meant to be a little girl and made it a corner of a room. Moving his hand down, he wiped away something wet and sticky from the corner of his mouth as he looked around the area outside the girl explosion. In the opposite corner there was white wallpaper with baseballs, bats, footballs and soccer balls on it. The area had a bookshelf and other toys, another shelf, construction vehicles, trucks, action figures. It wasn't anything he would want to play with, but it was better than what was around him, and he looked down, picking up the doll in his lap. Still tired and groggy, he just let go of it, letting it fall into his lap as he continued to try and figure out where he was. Kennedy knew he had seen this room before, but couldn't place it. At the center of the room were two circular small tables. To the side at one wall were cubby holes, with a large TV mounted above them playing a cartoon he didn't recognize. The opposite wall had a stack of large soft foam stuffed shapes. Both McKenzie and Abby were sitting at one table doing something, and past them was a desk that the older woman, Miss Jolene, sat, and on the wall behind her was a whiteboard. Even seeing the full room, his waking mind took a little bit to remember this was the daycare the girls had been dropped off at the other day. He was about to get up when he saw the older of the two girls tell the other something before getting up to come over to him. Look who woke up from her nap. He blinked a few times before glaring at her. Kennedy considered telling her how they weren't at the park anymore, a place with so many people he had been intimidated into doing what she said, and that she had better watch it or he would show her how much stronger boys were than girls. That is what he wanted to do, but McKenzie had 5 inches on him, and with him sitting it felt like she towered over him. What do you want? McKenzie tilted her head to the side slightly, smiling down at the boy, who didn't look like a boy. Taking note that his hair needed a good brushing with hair sticking after getting messing in his slumber, before sitting down on the floor Indian style in front of him. I just wanted to remind you that till we get home, you are my little sister. He had agreed to that earlier, but he felt her leverage was gone. Sure, he couldn't change here, but he could sneak out when the old bat wasn't looking and hide in the gym, or one of the gym's 2 bathrooms if someone was in there. Why should I? He said in a harsh whisper, not wanting the woman who had slapped his behind earlier to come over if she heard yelling. Still sitting in front of him, McKenzie leaned forward on one hand, holding up the other with her index finger in the air. 1, because I'm your big sister and you wouldn't want me mad at you. I'm older than you by 4 years. You are shorter than by like a foot, and you are 10, and I think really bad at math if you think 10 is 4 years older than 13. Also, 2. She held up another finger. Since I have a phone and you don't, I have your new boyfriend's phone number. What would happen if he and his parents found out who you were in? McKenzie drew out the word, thinking about what Max had told her. How you kissed him. Kennedy opened his mouth, about to protest that he hadn't done anything of the sort, that it had been him who had been kissed, but as he did, something hit him. This girl knew, she already knew that a boy kissed him. Shame bubbled up, leaving his cheeks burning, and then the threat of telling them it would end up the same as before. Being kissed on the cheek wasn't sex, he wasn't some sexual predator, but those guys on the show always said how they hadn't done anything and they were well arrested. He didn't want to sit next to, talk to, or be anything with any kids. If he wanted to have sex with anyone, it was Miss Mia, but that wouldn't matter when the police came. "I will do it," he said in a small voice. "Are you sure? 'Cause I have a 3 and a 4. Maybe a 5, but I mean, I have 3 more reasons why you should do as I say. Please don't tell anyone, I don't want to go to jail," Kennedy pleaded with her. Once upon a time he didn't think going to juvie would be so bad. His caseworker at the time had told him a bunch of bad things. He thought he could tough it out, but deep down he knew it was mostly bluster. He had been okay up to this point because he could run, he could hide or make himself look smaller, doing what he was told. In jail there would be no running, no hiding, and if he went in there, or worse, adult jail, and they thought he liked kids. No, he couldn't do that. This little girl was the worst bully he ever encountered, with what she was threatening him with so casually. Jail? You wouldn't go to jail. Kennedy felt his jaw quiver. She didn't even understand what she was threatening him with. Of course he would. You said you don't want me out of the house, but if you told people, I would go to jail. You know that, right? You have to know that. You can't tell anyone. The two of them both looked at one another like they were dumb. Kennedy, because this girl just didn't understand the world, and her thinking at most Kennedy would be grounded. It wasn't like their prank hurt anyone and they hadn't stolen anything. Well, if you don't want to get in trouble, you better do as I say. Now hold on, McKenzie said, pulling out her phone, pointing it at Kennedy. I will, but what are you doing? She looked from her phone screen to Kennedy and then back to the phone screen when she clicked on her camera, ready to start recording. Going to make a video of you saying how you are the prettiest 10-year-old there is and how you are so happy to have a little sister and big sister to play with. I am not going to say that. McKenzie lowered the phone, crossing her arms over her chest. So you rather see what happens when you don't do what I say? Kennedy picked the doll up off his lap that he had dropped there, tossing it to the side into the mountain of stuffed animals. This isn't fair. Ken huffed. He was right, it wasn't fair at all. Yet he didn't really have a choice. Well, he had one other, and that would lead to a worse place. So he really just had no good choice, just one bad and one really, really bad. Fine. McKenzie sat up straighter with a big smile on her face, knowing that she had him where she wanted him, and with videos like this there was no way she would be getting grounded at all. It would all go on him if her mom ended up angry. Well, for not doing what I said, you first have to. She thought for a second. You are going to stand up, hold the sides of your dress, and twirl around like you are happy and say how happy you are that everyone think you are a little girl. And you are going to do it sounding as happy as can be. But Kennedy stopped talking. The girl hadn't so much as given him a hard look, just raised an eyebrow. Standing up, Kennedy pressed his lips together, trying to give a pleading look to the girl that he was growing to hate. How did Miss Mia end up with a girl this mean? I can't believe I'm doing this. I am just so excited that everything thinks I'm a little girl. Today is just the bestest day ever. Kennedy had a closed-mouth smile on his face that was large enough to touch his eyes as he swung his head from side to side slowly, and he pinched each side of his dress, doing a single twirl, doing his best to pretend there wasn't a camera on him right now taking pictures. That was good. Now do the next one, and I will leave you to play with the Barbies till we go home. Kennedy felt like he could cry. He wouldn't, but he felt like he could as he looked into her eyes. This is really embarrassing. If I do a good job saying it, could you not keep the pictures? McKenzie bit into the corner of her lower lip. The first video was to keep her out of trouble. She really didn't need the second. If you make me forget you have boy bits in those panties, I will not keep the video. Video? She nodded. Yep. Kennedy sighed, closing his eyes for a few seconds. I'm the prettiest 10-year-old princess there is. And I'm super happy to have a little sister and a big sister as pretty as you to play with. Kennedy added a playful giggle at the end, feeling like he was going to end up sick to his stomach again. That same smile was on his face, but he let go of the dress, as he saw someone standing behind McKenzie. The smile slid off his face as he looked at the woman with long red hair that came down to her middle back. She had green eyes, minimal makeup, more than a few earrings in each ear. He kept taking her in as he was frozen in fear, hoping she hadn't heard him just say that. This unknown woman had freckles across her face, glossy lips that he could only dream about kissing. She wore a purple ribbed tank top that did nothing to hide how large she was in the chest, tight black workout leggings with a gray pattern going down the side, and a pair of purple athletic shoes. Kenzie found herself laughing at the display in front of her. She looked off to her side to see if Abby was going to have a problem with someone else claiming to be the prettiest princess, but she wasn't at the table anymore and the light was on under the bathroom door. Hello there, little ladybug. Kennedy swallowed hard, but found himself unable to move as he looked at the woman in front of him. He was terrified and turned on at the same time, wanting to both flee and hug her so that he pressed his head and face into her chest. She wasn't talking to him though. She was looking at McKenzie, who she was standing behind when she walked up. He hadn't noticed her coming into the room at all. Turning her head at first, then soon her entire body before jumping to her feet, McKenzie felt her entire body buzz with excitement to the point she was practically vibrating. She wrapped both her hands around her aunt. Aunt Rosie! You're in town. I missed you. I missed you. Rosemary wrapped one hand around her niece, running the fingers of her free hand through the girl's matching red hair. I missed you too, Ladybug. I heard we were getting a new member to the family and I just had to come visit. She turned her attention to the young blonde girl who had just proclaimed she was the prettiest princess, giving her a loving smile, but never let go of her niece. Knowing shortly little Abigail would be charging her like a bull to do the same. You must be Kennedy. It is a pleasure to meet you. I'm your aunt, or I will be your aunt. My name is Rosemary, but the girls tend to call me Rosie. You can too if you like. Unable to utter a sound as the beautiful woman talked to him, seeing him dressed like this. Believing that he was just another girl was hard for him to process. Many kids and a few adults at the park had believed the same, but having someone who made him wish he was a year older so he could take her out and, well, do things a boy and girl do together see him like this had him more than flusters. He wasn't sure why, but he bowed his head and put his palms over his face, wishing her and everyone would just really disappear once he couldn't see them anymore. Pulling back from her, Aunt McKenzie looked at Kennedy, seeing his embarrassment. She is shy. She wasn't sure why she had said that. She had never lied to her aunt before. McKenzie liked having Kennedy as a little sister. She at least did what she was told even if she needed some prodding, so much better than the mean-spirited boy, but she knew she couldn't lie or shouldn't even if that was her plan all along to not get in trouble. She hadn't done anything yet except say Kennedy was shy and infer he was a girl, but still saying that to her aunt made her feel truly guilty. I'm actually Aunt Rosie. Kennedy is a 17-year-old boy.